Our story begins in the east of Zhaoge City. We are approaching a huge, beautiful temple. Suddenly, a beautiful girl appears with a book in her hand and asks Yang Chen, "What did he do?" She showed him the cover of the book and asked why he had drawn a whole book with it and sold it at the academy. Yang Chen stood with his tongue hanging out and said that everyone liked the book because his older sister was so beautiful. His sister was dejected and said that he was doing all sorts of nonsense instead of cultivating, and soon they would give grades and he would be expelled. But the guy raised his head proudly, because he had reached the culmination of the Fu-Hu fist, so he wouldn't have any problems with his grades. There were people standing behind him who laughed and did not believe him. After all he did was get sick and had no success in his studies. But the sister took out a whip and said that since he was so cool, let him show her his Fu-Hu fist. But Yang Chen tried to get rid of her by saying that he didn't want to harm her, they would try another time. But a long whip immediately struck him and he barely dodged it. The ground cracked, and Ian asked her to stop. After all, his fighting spirit was too strong, he could really hurt her. For a moment, the sister and the others were silent. And then they started laughing wildly because of Jan's words. The older sister asked if he even knew what fighting spirit was. Yang Cheng proudly said that of course he knows. He said that the fighting spirit was a kind of gift from heaven for a cultivator. Their owners were called heavenly masters. The spirit fills the owner with strength and gives him abilities. In the future, such a master can become a god. The sister put away the whip and was surprised by his extensive knowledge on the subject. Yan said that it was because he was that very heavenly master. Suddenly, he was distracted by someone's wild laughter from behind. One of the guys in the back said with a grin that someone who had been treated for 3 years could not become a heavenly master. His grin became even more sinister. He said that Yang was just a piece of dung, not a master. Yan was not surprised by such a speech. To which the bastard sat down and said that even if it was true, he needed to prove his fighting spirit to everyone. Sister called Xiu Liang and asked him to stop, but he was already furious and summoned the tiger. Xiu promised to help his older sister deal with this worthless thing. Everyone around was jubilant. Xiu Liang, with the second stage of tempering, will quickly punish Yang Chen for his lies, and Xiu was already very close, gathering up the blow of the tiger's teeth in his fist. But Jan quickly frowned and concentrated, and before disappearing, he attacked his opponent, so much so that Xiu Liang flew back and smashed his body through the floor. Everyone around was in shock and did not understand what just happened, and I stood there with a smoking fist and a huge dark fighting spirit behind me. The older sister called out to her brother, who was surrounded by an ominous aura. He turned his indifferent gaze on her, to which his sister said, "He needs to quickly become an inner disciple and not waste Tianzhao's martial arts." And while the people behind were pumping the poor guy out, Yang Cheng smiled and said that he would do as his sister said. Everyone else stood behind and couldn't believe that such a guy had such a sinister and terrifying spirit. What was his cultivation stage? But Yang Cheng just stood there smiling, pleased with his strength. The girls around him paid attention to him. Some even wanted to marry such a handsome talent. But it wasn't Yang Cheng, but some blonde guy. The girls continued to admire him, the strongest disciple in the outer sect. And such a handsome guy, too. Suddenly, the blonde man stopped when he saw Yang Cheng coming out of the gate. He was immediately delighted. After all, it was his older brother in front of him. This sharp reaction surprised Jan at first, and then he began to hug his dear Xiaoke. And everyone around didn't understand. Why did the best and worst disciple of the outer sect get along so well with each other? Yang hugged his brother and said that today he scared everyone with his true dragon fighting spirit. Even Li Qinglin was shocked. Suddenly Xiao asked, "Did Yan's older sister hug him? Or did she do something like that?" Yan said that she looked at him with such admiring eyes. If they were alone, she would definitely hug him. But he was very sorry that Musue didn't know about it at all. Xiao turned around and said, "If Musu doesn't know about his fighting spirit, then they should show it to her quickly." And Jan happily agreed and moved forward. The scene changed to Yu Musue's house. The guy was walking with his brother and whistling some tune. Suddenly, a girl stood in front of them and ordered them to stop. She was very angry and serious. And so Yan suddenly hid behind Xiao's back. Xiao had to wriggle out of it and told Sister Shi Kang that they were looking for Musue. Suddenly, Kang leaned over and asked if there was anything she could do to help them. They asked her what she meant. Kang said he could tell her what they wanted to tell her. Jan suddenly pointed his finger at her and shouted that it was none of her business. She should stay out of it and just let them pass. But she looked at them haughtily and said that they were just idiots. Jan didn't get the joke and frowned, and Shikang chuckled. saying that Musue didn't want to associate with someone like Yang. After all, she would become an inner disciple and they would never see each other again. Jan said it was nonsense. He wouldn't believe it until Musue personally told him so. Suddenly, a girl with a beautiful hair clip approached them. She was very beautiful and looked at these two guys in front of her gate. It was Musue. Xiao turned to her sharply and asked, "What does all this mean?" She suddenly hesitated and turned to them, trying to find the words. Suddenly, she started shouting at Jan that now they had grown up and changed. Now it would be better for them to stay away from each other. After she finished her speech, her face was covered in sweat, and Jan, looking at her, said that everything was fine. He understood her, and then he turned around, leaving them and began to leave this estate. Xiao was about to leave too, but before that, he told Musue that she would greatly regret such a decision. And he also turned around and followed John away from here. The scene changed, night fell. Yang and Xiao spent time together in nature, meditating and eating all sorts of delicious things. Yang Cheng was just practicing meditation and cultivating his fighting spirit. This is how his art of the primordial demonic dragon developed. And even Jan himself didn't understand what it was. He saw a book materializing from his energy and spirit in the sky and reached out to it. Taking it in his hands and reading the title, he was surprised. It was the legacy of the fighting spirit of the day, demonic dragon. Opening it, he touched the pages and the letters began to glow and emit energy. Yan thought and realized that with his strength, he could only train the first chapter. He sat up in a pose and realized that this was a terrifying technique that could make him incredibly powerful. And he immediately decided to try it. Energy began to accumulate in his hands. Suddenly, glowing magical drops began to drip from the sky across the entire clearing. Xiao, who had been eating before, was shocked by this phenomenon. He turned around and saw a huge blue energy sphere where Yang Cheng had been. Xiao didn't understand. How did his brother suck out all the spiritual energy in this courtyard? Jan himself sat in this sphere, and huge clots of energy flew around him. He reasoned that Taoist masters are divided by attributes. Most have only one, but very rarely are those with several. For example, the fire sky Taoist can only absorb the aura of heaven and earth associated with fire, while other attributes are difficult to absorb or even sense. He looked at his hands and was shocked by the realization. He was a heavenly master with all the attributes. Ian swallowed in shock, and he began to rejoice loudly, shouting, "Hooray!" throughout the entire forest area. Zhao immediately came to the rescue and asked his brother what he was so happy about. What happened? Young Chen immediately hugged him and said that from now on he would protect him. They both thought that this spirit's ability was amazing. It was able to absorb the aura of the entire courtyard in a few moments. Yan immediately became enthusiastic about the idea of going to Mount Chao Ge, which greatly surprised Xiao. And the guy immediately ran towards the mountain because it was an ideal place for training. There was a lot of spiritual energy there and they would be able to prepare for the exam. And the scene moved immediately to Mount Chaoga. In the middle of nature, the guy was meditating. His energy began to rise upward. This is understandable. After all, his fighting spirit was incredibly huge and strong. Xiao was simply shocked that his brother continued to cultivate. Does he really want to become the most fearsome cultivation beast? His aura continued to spread throughout nature. His body turned red. His fighting spirit was strained, and even his mouth was gushing with strong energy. Xiao was surprised because he only needed 1 day for the second stage of tempering, instead of a whole month like Xiao. And the blonde immediately sat down to continue training. He would not allow Yan to surpass him in all respects. The day on the mountain was already drawing to an end. The sunset took over the sky. Suddenly something distracted Xiao. Something was wrong. He began to turn around and cover his nose. Some kind of disgusting smell spread throughout the area. The guy was surprised when he saw a handful of ashes where Jan had been and ran up to help. Suddenly the coal on his body began to crack, and he broke free from this stone captivity with force and screams. Looking at all this coal, Xiao was shocked. What stage of body tempering is he now? The third stage of body tempering requires refining the flesh, condensing its quality, and removing impurities. Even for the talented Xiao Ke, this stage took 3 long months. Incredibly, his brother Yang Cheng needed less than a day to go from the first to the third stage of tempering. This is truly an outstanding achievement. Suddenly, a beautiful melody began to sound from Yan's stomach. He turned to his Xiao, and he said that he was very hungry. Xiao quickly turned around and told Gigi to wait here, and he quickly ran out of sight, leaving Jan alone. A few minutes later, Xiao was already here. He brought his brother a tempered jade hoof ox. This powerful carcass should be enough to satisfy the cultivator's incredible hunger. And then he threw her to the ground, and it was cooked very quickly. John devoured the meat with wild appetite. Xiao looked at this with surprise. After all, the meat disappeared from the Gigi's hands very quickly, and very soon only bones remained from the carcass of a healthy bull. Having swallowed the bull, Yang Cheng only sadly stated the obvious to Xiao Kui. Hunger still tormented his body, and much more energy was required. The situation has become alarming, Xiao Kui asked his brother in a panic about his condition. Yang Cheng suddenly began to tremble. His body was shaken by strange vibrations. Xiao Kui expressed his concern that his brother's martial spirit was acting up. Yang Cheng, grasping this thought, asked about his own spirit in surprise, and then the spirit came out, covering everything around with its ominous aura. And then it started to spin even more like a tornado. Finally, everything calmed down, and in place of the fighting spirit there was a scorched forest. After the strange reaction of the body and thoughts about the spirit, relief came. The man calmly declared, the painful hunger had finally receded. Xiao Kui anxiously asked how he was feeling. Yang Cheng explained that if he hadn't escaped in time, the furious energy inside would have completely dried up. Now he felt a powerful surge of strength. Xiao Kui exclaimed in admiration. In half a day, his brother had risen 2 levels. He immediately suggested testing his new power by hitting something with his fist. Jan agreed, and then he looked at the tree in front of him. He took a stance and prepared to strike the tree with the force of his fighting spirit, and he succeeded. The blow was accompanied by the fangs of a tiger and the energy of the spirit, and he aimed the blow at the tree. And in the tree there was a huge hole shining. Xiao was shocked. Could this really be a fire attribute? Gigi closed his eyes and breathed fire, dispersing the fire. A fiery attribute burned in his chest. The blow released the true chi of the fire attribute. His ability to comprehend the essence and deprive creations of energy lived up to his legendary fame. As darkness fell, Xiao Kui suggested that his brother return. The man refused, deciding to find a cave to spend the night in and continue the practice until the morning. And they moved on. There was concern in Xiao's voice as he turned to his brother, asking about the reason for his sudden restlessness or unusual state. Immediately, Jan looked into the bushes, and I saw something very interesting there. He saw a girl there, right in the forest, alone, and also happily swimming in a warm forest lake. She had almost finished bathing, and through the steam she could see him hovering. Yang looked at this with his jaw dropped, and Xiao next to him asked, what was he looking at? And then he also noticed the naked girl. Now they both stood with their jaws hanging open. He tried to shout the girl's name, but the protagonist shut him up. But the girl still heard something and turned around, asking who was there. And getting up from the water, she stared at the bushes in which someone was moving. The 2 main brothers sat down, trying to remain unnoticed. When everything calmed down, Jan decided to look out from the bushes and assess the situation. The girl immediately got dressed and shouted, whoever it was, let them show themselves. There was no answer, so she decided to walk around the area and see who it was. And the girl walked right next to the bush with our main characters. But then she turned around abruptly, drew her sword and walked away. The girl anxiously recognized the earth mad bear and rushed forward. Xiao urgently urged brother Yang Cheng to flee from the deadly beast. Yang Cheng showed unexpected curiosity towards the earth mad bear, declaring his desire to see the beast and offering to go take a look at it. Xiao Qi warned his brother. An adult mad bear has the power of the 8th level of body tempering, which is too dangerous even for him. Yang Cheng ignored his concerns as he noticed a girl heading in the same direction and firmly suggested that Xiao Kui follow her to have a look. The scene changed and now we finally saw this huge mad bear. He struck blow after blow with his bare paw, and the ground beneath their feet cracked from them. The girl was there, on the battlefield, and quickly rushed towards the bear to kill it. It turned out that the girl taking a bath in that place was Qian Lingxi, which was an unexpected discovery for those watching. Yang Cheng ordered Xiao Kui to help, while simultaneously pointing out an important fact. The bear that was attacked was still a juvenile. The brother noted the condition of the young bear, only the 5th level of tempering, multiple wounds in vital points, close to death. Suddenly, the main character heard something very close. This girl danced the tango at the speed of sound with a huge monster bear, and finally she managed to hit him, and scarlet blood poured out in the moonlight. The corpse fell right next to the proud warrior girl. Qian Lingxi, Having discovered the peeping Tom, coldly asked Yang Cheng and Xiao Kui if they were finally going to show themselves out of hiding. Yang Cheng walked out with a falsely cheerful greeting, calling his meeting with Qian Lingxi a coincidence. She also recognized him with disdain as the trash Yang Cheng. Yang Cheng's reply was accompanied by a bitter smile, as he noted that Qian Lingxi had indeed remembered it, hiding her growing anger. Qian Lingxi asked suspiciously if they were at the lake. Yang Cheng pretended not to understand what lake they were talking about. The man began to make excuses. They just heard the noise, came to watch, and admired Lingxi's fighting skills. Xiao Kui was shocked by his impudence. To Lingxi's doubts, Yang Cheng swore to the truth of his words, elevating the girl to the status of a goddess in his enthusiastic speeches. Qian Lingxi reminded him with a cold smile that Yang Cheng had once called her not a goddess, but a much less flattering word, shameless. Ian was shocked that she remembered exactly that, and she turned away to the bear's carcass without explaining anything. Lingxi's anger grew stronger, and she threatened to kill Yang Cheng if she found out that he was lying to her in this ridiculous situation. And then she went into the depths of the forest. Yang Cheng tried to feign confusion by asking again what the word shameless meant. Xiao Qi, wanting to help his brother, only made matters worse by recalling his own words from 3 years ago about 12-year-old Lingxi as a future shameless woman. Yang Cheng acknowledged the fact of what was said, marveling at Lingxi's memory. Xiao, not understanding the tension, began to discuss her as the future bride of the main character. Trying to save face, the boy turned to his brother, and he arrogantly declared his status as a heavenly master, promising a future abundance of beauties, where Qian Lingxi would only be a backup option. Half a month later, they were back in the training mountains. A man in hard boots suddenly burst into the quiet village. These were 2 tired, dirty, cut-all-over-the-body main characters. Yang Cheng complained about the side effect of the sun scripture technique, the constant burning of clothes. Xiao Kui reassured him, noting his rapid progress to the peak of the 5th level of tempering. Yang Cheng confidently promised to protect Xiao Kui in the future. He urgently reminded about the time. The rules of the exam to the inner courtyard will be announced today in the square of the outer courtyard. Jan ran. He needed things. The scene moved again, to another courtyard of the training area. A beautiful sister in red stood and held some book in her hands. Finally, the 2 main characters, Yang and Xiao, came to her, and they were shining. The crowd of disciples were discussing Yang Cheng, some doubting his status as a celestial master after 3 years at the 1st level, others mocking him, anticipating his failure in the exam. Some people regretted that the capable Xiao Kui was associated with such a useless older brother like Yang Cheng, expressing disappointment at their relationship. The main character was glowing with an aura, walking confidently, when suddenly he stopped. Yang Cheng, having met Yu Mushue's elder sister, tried to smooth things over with a banal compliment about her appearance, ignoring the tension, but she didn't respond. Yu Mushue coldly asked Yang Cheng about his activities during his absence from mandatory martial arts training for more than half a month. The man said that he had been cultivating diligently. He confidently added that he was not afraid of the inner courtyard exam due to his status as a great heavenly master. She tensed and looked at him suspiciously. Could he be the heavenly master? It's unlikely. She turned away from the deceiver Jan in anger. Suddenly she came close and asked about reaching the 2nd level of body tempering. Yang Cheng suddenly announced that he had completed the bone refining and reached the peak of the 5th level. The sister was furious and angry at Yang Cheng, and she could barely contain her anger. Yu Musue, clearly not believing him, turned away, saying that she would stop caring for him. Yang Cheng was only surprised by her anger and distrust. Xiao stood next to him. The blonde mentally ridiculed Yang Cheng's statement about jumping from the 1st to the 5th tempering level in half a month, calling it ridiculous and completely implausible. Suddenly, some old man fell from above and appeared in front of the entire square. The old teacher addressed everyone and announced the rules of the inner courtyard examination, which consisted of 2 stages for all participants. Oh my! The old man levitated. He told about the 1st stage. Teams of up to 3 people collect materials of spiritual herbs and beasts on Mount Keog by any means necessary. The teachers will provide security, but calling for help means failure. The main condition is to stay alive. In 3 days, the groups will return with materials. The number will determine the scores before the 2nd stage of the exam. Grandfather was still hanging in the air, and the people below applauded and rejoiced at the old master. The elder sister was immediately delighted. These rules are ideal for Yang Cheng. She suggested finding a strong third member. Yang Cheng told elder sister that they didn't need help. The two of them could handle it. The girl called him useless and walked away from the square in anger. Xiaoqi remarked to his brother that elder sister was genuinely concerned about their success in the upcoming test. The man chuckled. In his opinion, the sister only cared about her own reward and not their result. Finally, the hiking trail opened up. Mountains. Xiaoqi walked with his brother and asked him if they really were giving up on finding more team members. Yang Cheng answered cautiously. They will only take a truly strong ally, so as not to become a burden. He walked and supported the main character. Everything was fine. There were no problems. Xiaoqi pointed out to his brother the approaching Musue, noticing her in the crowd of exam participants. Almost everyone around greeted her joyfully. Wen Zhenming, a new character, appeared, watching the preparations for the trials in the square, and flirting with Musue. Xiao introduces Wen Zhenming, the young master of Guangyuan Company, a student at the Batu Pavilion in the courtyard of the institute. The man indifferently rejects a relationship with Yu Musue, stating that her choice of partner is no longer his concern. Wen Zhenming just noticed Xiao and Yang carefully walking through the crowd and looking sideways at him. The boy mockingly addresses Xiao Kui, ironically calling him the first genius of the outer courtyard. He sarcastically asks if Wu Kei is afraid of failing the exam by teaming up with his useless brother Yang Cheng. Xiao Kui sharply dismisses Wen Zhenming, saying that it is none of his business. Wen Zhenming pretends to just warn and began to walk away, sarcastically wishing the duo good luck before the test. And the two brothers silently left, completely angry at the cocky upstart. The audience discusses the absurdity of the team. The strong Wu Kei with the trash Yang Cheng will not find a third member, dooming themselves to failure. The crowd agrees. Against 3 opponents, the duo is doomed, especially with Yang Cheng as a liability. There is no chance of passing. The scene switches back to the mountain. It's already night. Ian was standing in front of some kind of bear monster, and it sent an ultrasonic wave at the guy. And after the sound had no effect on him, the bear decided to hit him with his paw. But the guy immediately activated his fire talent, and his hands began to glow with aura. And he directs this fist, full of energy, straight into the bear's chest, and he immediately falls flat on his back. In just one blow, the huge bear was defeated. On Mount Chaogay, rubbing his hands, Yang Cheng orders Xiao Kui to collect the spoils of the battle. Xiao Kui was amazed. His brother instantly defeated the Earth Mad Bear with one blow, showing incredible speed. Yang Cheng suggests moving on to the next target, but Xiao Kui suddenly notices something strange, interrupting their path. They froze in place as a huge crowd of happy running people rushed past right in front of them. Xiao Kui insists on checking the source of the celestial sign, a rare phenomenon that promises miracles or danger. And coming closer, they, together with other people, observed a huge purple-black space in the sky. Xiao asks his brother if the heavenly sign really means that a miracle will soon appear on Mount Kyoge. The man explains that this is not a miracle, but only a geological phenomenon. Vibrations of the Earth's veins caused the heavenly glow. Suddenly, 2 huge, bright comets floated across the sky. From a huge space in the sky, 2 old professors suddenly flew out, levitating magicians. One of them was the same old man in the square explaining the rules. The old man notes the unusual power of the local Earth veins, capable of generating such large-scale celestial phenomena. He warns, it is unknown whether the vein will bear treasure. The zone is dangerous. An accidental entry into the vortex threatens death. All the people raised their heads and listened to this speech. All this frightened them. The crowd sighs in disappointment. The phenomenon seems boring, and only Jan remains in front of the anomaly. The man ponders whether ginseng scripture, who comprehends the essence of things, will be able to understand the nature of this thunderstorm phenomenon. He decided to activate it and check it out. He closed his eyes and began to accumulate energy. Immediately, red threads of aura and magic began to appear around. This decision will entail consequences. And suddenly a huge lightning bolt took and struck straight at the main character. The elders were shocked by this turn of events. Now the guy looked like a piece of coal, which was still pulsating with the energy of lightning. He fell to his knees, and there was a very empty look in his eyes, as if the guy had died. But suddenly some processes started working inside his heart, and now there was a purple glow right next to his heart. Some time passed and Yang cooled down. Xiao immediately ran to his aid. The elders also went down to the guy, who was still smoking. One of the old men took him by the hand to check whether he was alive or not. The old man in blue said that this was bad luck for Yang Cheng. Surprisingly, the man survived the blow, showing incredible resilience. The yellow old man promised to take his brother to Elder Qian for treatment. Zhao insisted on accompanying him, calling the victim his own brother. The teacher allowed Xiaokui to leave the mountain with the injured man, while the rest of the students continued the test. Xiaoqi expressed concern about the fate of their participation in the exam after leaving the test early. The teacher reassured him that the exam could be continued tomorrow. Yang Cheng should have recovered by then. The very next morning, they were already in a beautiful building in the middle of the forest. This is where the warriors are treated. When Yang Cheng woke up, he barely remembered the lightning strike. He was disoriented in an unfamiliar place, and he looked very crumpled. Suddenly he felt a strange burning sensation in his stomach, that same energy again, and then he remembered his fusion of fire energy with the energy of purple lightning. The man was amazed to find a clot of energy inside himself, reminiscent of the power of heavenly lightning. Shock pierced him, and he remembered everything, even his defeat in the face of the elements. The solar scripture absorbed the thunder energy, transforming it into a new form, heavenly thunder chi. Feeling the power of the new energy, Yang Cheng believed in his superiority. A feeling of invincibility came over him. Euphoria gave way to bewilderment. The man looked around, trying to understand his current location. He decided to look around and left the house, throwing the doors open. Jan saw in front of him a large courtyard full of picturesque nature, and also a girl drawing on a large sheet of paper. The man was interested in this activity and decided to come closer and get to know her. Suddenly, Yang Cheng felt a powerful aura coming from her, which raised questions about her true skill level. The cultivation masters, the elite assistants of the heavenly Daos, had the highest status on the continent. They were all heavenly masters, but not the other way around. Cultivation master patterns provided unique combat and training effects, and were applied to weapons and armor to enhance them. Yang Cheng was surprised to recognize the girl. It was the same girl they had been spying on bathing in the forest. She turned around and directed her gaze at the main character. And then she left her work a little and turned to the guy, surprised that he was already awake. The guy was shocked and asked the girl directly if she was really a heavenly Taoist master. She confidently confirmed her status as a heavenly master and asked the reason for such a question. Suddenly, Qian Bao Guang appeared, a new character interested in the main character's abilities. He clarified whether the protagonist senses the vibrations of someone else's spiritual power, testing his sensitivity. Yang Cheng replied that yes, of course he could do that, and walked over to the table. Jian identified the pattern on the skin as wooden defensive, noting its heavy energy. Xiao was surprised by the protagonist's sensory abilities, and smiling, he asked if he would like to become his student and study. Yang Cheng bowed respectfully, introducing himself as a disciple before his master or mentor. The man performed the full ritual of submission, 2 kneelings with 9 prostrations. Qian Lingxi tried to dissuade her father from his decision, calling Yang Cheng a disgrace, but she was interrupted before she finished her sentence. The mentor set a strict condition. The student must achieve fame within 5 years, otherwise he will be expelled from the school without the right to return. The man clarified the criteria for fame. What does it mean to achieve fame? The teacher demanded succinctly. Glory must thunder throughout the Eastern Kingdom. Yang Cheng was shocked, doubting the reality of the time frame. 5 years for glory throughout the East seemed an impossible task. He countered by saying that their city of Chaogay was only a tiny part of Tianan County, which itself was one of 108 in the kingdom. The teacher coldly asked if the student had any objections to the conditions set or doubts about his abilities. The boy gave in, deciding to first master the skill of a cultivator. 5 years seemed quite distant for now. The girl stood aside and was not very happy with the union of her father and Yan. The master announced a temporary stay at the academy. He told Yang Cheng to use this time to study, to soak up knowledge like a sponge while he could learn. The mentor forbade unnecessary ceremonies, ordering to be bolder. He reminded about the need to complete the exam in the inner courtyard. The teacher ordered Lingxiu to see Yang Cheng off, ending their meeting with a formal gesture. And she did it. She walked him to the door along a beautiful path with trees on either side. Yang Cheng expressed genuine surprise upon learning that Chen Lingxi was also a celestial Taoist master. Yang Cheng inquired about Chen Lingxi's current tempering level. She responded sharply that it was none of his business, rejecting his attempts to get closer. The man inadvertently advised Lindsay to wear her hair in a ponytail. She countered by asking him about his right to give advice. And here we were again on the mountain. The scene changed to the eyes and mouth of an evil wolf. Opposite him stood Xiao, confident in his strength. Suddenly the wolf rushed forward, straight at the blond man with a sword in his hands. And as soon as the wolf approached, Xiao cut it off with a sharp movement. The wolf fell to the ground, and Yang praised his brother for the noticeable progress in sword technique, watching his training. Xiaokui anxiously asked about Yang Cheng's well-being after the lightning incident on Mount Chaogay. The man confidently stated that an ordinary thunderstorm was not capable of killing him, demonstrating his readiness to continue on his way. A delighted Xiaokui suggested that they immediately resume hunting for spiritual beasts, confident in his brother's strength. The scene changed. 3 days had passed since the start of the exam in the inner courtyard on Mount Kyoge, when Zhenming sarcastically asked if he still hadn't found a strong duo for the third team member. Yang Cheng coldly ordered Wen Zhengming to get out of the way, ignoring his provocations. Wen called the man trash, mocking his claimed loot and demanding proof of strength. And the old commander ordered all the teams to immediately lay the loot before him, claiming the rights to the materials. He announced the conditions for passage: at least 3 spirits of beasts or herbs. Teams without loot automatically failed. He added an important incentive. The amount of materials collected directly affected the value of the awards after the exam, and Venya's team went to show. The servant placed the bag on the ground in front of the elder. He immediately announced the results of Wen Zhengming, Yu Mu Shui, and Chen Xiao's team: 7 spirit beasts and 1 herb. They had successfully passed the assessment. Wen turned sarcastically towards Yang and Xiao's team and asked, "What do they think about this?" They were not impressed. Jan even yawned and told his brother to go show off their catch. Wen still laughed. He didn't believe that someone would have more loot. But then Xiao pulled out a huge bag of their team's loot from behind the wall. Everyone was in shock. Wen, his companion, and the people in the crowd's jaws dropped to the ground immediately. The crowd froze, staring at Yang Cheng's huge bag. Whispers of doubt about the number of spirit beasts inside swept across the square. There was open distrust in the voices. Many considered the bag empty or filled with deception, accusing him of bragging. Zhao immediately put the bag on the podium, and a huge amount of dust rose up around. The old man demanded that the bag be immediately opened, and the contents presented for general inspection. And Xiao immediately began to open it in order to show it to everyone around. Seeing this, the crowd of people were shocked. Some fainted from such a large number. Wen was shocked and started screaming that this simply couldn't be happening. Everyone in the square could see that the bag contained a huge number of trophies from all the monsters. And in front of this whole pile of gifts stood a proud Xiao, pleased with the impression he made on everyone. The old man stood in shock and asked his accountant to quickly check and count all the trophies. And the assistant began to count quickly. He didn't have enough fingers. There were so many trophies. Yang Cheng also stood to the side, pleased with himself, and Wen stood and ignored his girlfriend. He couldn't believe his eyes. The announcement of the results shocked everyone. Xiao Kui and Yang Cheng's team submitted 90 spirit beasts and 5 herbs, successfully passing the test. 90 seemed absolutely impossible to Wen in 3 days. Even Xiao Kui alone would not be able to handle that many beasts. The teacher, however, congratulated them and sent them on to the next stage. Yang Cheng walked and asked Xiao about the possible rewards from the academy for such a huge haul. Xiao Kui said he didn't know, but it was good that Yang had hidden some herbs for them. Suddenly Mushu ran up and asked about the method of killing so many animals. The man only smiled mysteriously, once again referring to the great heavenly master's incomprehensible power, avoiding a direct answer. The girl suggested that the entire result was due to Xiao Kui, trying to explain the duo's incredible success. Xiao Qi tried to say something to Musue, but she interrupted him, reminding him of the importance of preparing for the next stage, where they would not be on the team. Yang Cheng confidently assured Xiao Kui that he was ready for the next round of tests, radiating calm. Xiao Kui acknowledged that Yang Cheng had personally defeated more than half of the 90 spirit beasts, giving credit to his strength. The man waved away the details, suggesting that they focus on the main thing, successfully completing the exam for the inner courtyard. The younger brother encouraged Yang Cheng to demonstrate his true power in the next stage of testing in front of all the skeptics. Yang Cheng nodded confidently and looked at the girl next to him, fully supporting the idea of showing off his capabilities in the upcoming round. The first round is over. The teams that passed have been instructed to report tomorrow for the second round of individual trials. The teacher reminded that the students' parents are present at the second stage, which should serve as additional motivation. Xiaoku asked if their father would come to the ceremony, a question that was mixed with hope and doubt. The man shook his head sadly. The chances of his father appearing seemed extremely low to him. The younger brother sighed. Maybe at least grandfather will come. Yang Cheng gently stopped him, not wanting to build unrealistic expectations. He reminded him that his grandfather had never left the estate. But if they enter the inner courtyard, everything may change. Xiao said that grandfather will be happy. Yang perked up. Access to the inner academy's techniques and martial arts was the goal. The man admitted to a gap in his fighting skills. The next day came and people stood near huge columns. Parents stood in their seats and watched their children, who were about to take part in the second stage. Zhao Qi excitedly pointed out to his brother the unexpected appearance of their father among the exam spectators. Yang Zhangye, Yang Cheng's father, introduced himself, and his presence caused a mixture of surprise and tension in his sons. The brothers hurried to their father. Yang Cheng called out to him, breaking the distance with a formal but reserved address. Yang Zhangye rudely called his sons brats and set a strict condition. Failing the exam meant renouncing paternity. Xiaokui sheepishly asked his father not to use harsh language in public, trying to soften the situation. Xiao walked up to his father and greeted him with a nod. Father praised Xiao for reaching the 7th level of tempering and dominating the outer courtyard, expressing approval for his strength. The guy denied the rumors of his dominance, wondering about the source of the information. He modestly rejected the ascribed fame. Father looked at Jan intently. Then he suddenly accused Yang Cheng of causing a conflict with Xiao Shui's daughter-in-law, demanding an explanation for the reason for the quarrel. Ian was shocked and looked at the girl behind him. Yu Qian, Yu Mushu's father, was indignant at his daughter-in-law's treatment and sharply rejected Yang Zhangye's familial claims. Yang and the girl Xiao were shocked by what their fathers were doing here. Someone mocked Yang Cheng's 3-year stagnation at level 1. They contrasted him with Yu Mu Shui at level 3. Even the awakening of Yang Cheng's martial spirit was called useless. He was considered a scum among the heavenly masters due to his weakness. The opinion was voiced. Jan's progress is a scam. The father clenched his teeth and was angry. He threatened his sons with death if they failed, telling them to prepare for the exam. Someone's disappointed whisper. 1st level. The old man had placed his hopes on Yan, but the result was depressing. The alienation between Yan and Xiaosu was noticed. Then the structure of the exam was announced. 3 stages to move into the inner courtyard. Xiaoqi was surprised that the first stage was the entrance exam. Yang Cheng was determined to win the main 3-stage exam. The grand prize has been revealed. The dragon pill for the winner. Its power has been highlighted as an incredible incentive for the participants. All the guys around were in shock. They could only dream about her. The origin of the pill has been clarified, a capital artifact created by the great warrior Elnir. The value turned out to be higher than expected. The dragon pill radically strengthened the body and increased strength. It even helped Void Realm masters break through level barriers. Everyone in the stands appreciated this proposal. The 2nd and 3rd places were each awarded an essence pill. The 4th to 10th place participants were each awarded 10 minor elixirs. The man was eager to obtain the essence pill. At the peak of tempering level 5, it would speed up his breakthrough to level 6. A strong determination flashed in Yang Cheng's eyes. Suddenly, his gaze slid towards Qian Lingxi, who was standing among the spectators. The crowd began to whisper about the appearance of Qian Lingxi and Guan Minghao, the 2 top talents of the outer courtyard, their aura suppressing the others. Even Xiaokui looked pale in comparison. The audience discussed the perfect couple, as strong as they were beautiful. Someone's indignant voice rang out from the crowd. Guan Minghao is not worthy of Lingxi with her talent and beauty. It seemed unfair. Suddenly, the girl immediately started to approach Yang Cheng, which surprised her very much. All her admirers looked sternly at Jan, who was at a loss in front of such a girl. Yang Cheng made a caustic comment about the changes in Lingxi in 3 years. His words sounded bitter and mocking. Qian Lingxi laughed sweetly, calling the man a shameless, impudent person for his innuendo and behavior. Suddenly, her jealous friend appeared from behind her and started yelling at the MC. He abruptly ordered Yang Cheng to disappear. His patience snapped. His voice trembled with humiliation and anger. The guy noticed him and quickly figured out what to do next. He hugged the girl, declaring their feelings. He demanded not to interfere in their relationship. Rumors of Guan Minghao's persistent courtship of Qian Lingxi spread. Her closeness to Yang Cheng left observers perplexed. The first stage of the exam was announced, a test of physical strength. The participants had to demonstrate their strength. The instructor explained the rules, a full blow to the pillar of power. Every inch of glow meant 100 jins of power. The minimum was qi of light to pass through. Guan Minghao sarcastically suggested that Yang Cheng give up without trying. Jan sharply rejected his interference in his exam. Guan Minghao snorted, calling the guy hopeless, his gesture expressing complete disdain for his opponent's chances. The first phase of testing has officially begun. Participants line up at the pillars of power for a demonstration of power. The scene changed. Everyone recorded results. 850 pounds, 900 pounds. Both figures did not reach the minimum of 1,000 pounds of force for the stage. Many participants did not pass the threshold. Spectators were surprised by the high difficulty of the first stage of the formal exam. A contestant appeared with a score of 1,000 pounds, the passing score. Whispers of courtyard resources and changing fortunes swept through the room. Gigi realized that even passing the strength test did not guarantee admission. The next two stages were a serious challenge for everyone. Situ Ping, a member of the Situ clan, struck. The force post produced an impressive 2,200 pounds. Situ Ping, the heir to a clan renowned for its physical strength and the diamond fist technique, introduced himself. The explanation for his strength was quickly found: innate data and clan technique. The result of 2,200 pounds did not cause surprise. Surely someone attributed Situ Ping's strength to expensive strengthening pills. Ian turned to the girl and called 2,000 pounds a disgrace to the clan's resources and technology. An argument broke out between the spectators. The lady accused the main character of envy and offered a bet on Situ Ping's real strength. Yang Cheng chuckled. Why did the girl not believe in him so much and asked about the terms of the bet? The terms of the bet were stated harshly. The loser would run around the city of Chaogay naked if his strength was less than 2,000 pounds. The second participant had asked about the reward if he won, hesitating before such a humiliating bet. And inside he was thinking that this was a good chance to finally approach this girl. The terms of the bet have changed. If Jan wins, he can ask for whatever he wants. The guy's eyes lit up and he said that if he won, the girl would owe him a kiss. The girl was surprised by Jan's self-confidence. His behavior seemed unreasonably insolent for an ordinary student. Suspicions of deception arose in the girl's mind, but she still confirmed her agreement to his terms, despite her doubts. Guan Minghao's appearance caused a stir. As one of the top 3 in the outer courtyard, his strength potential remained a mystery. The Guanshan Mianzhang technique doubled the strength at its peak. With it, Guan Minghao's output could reach an incredible 3,000 pounds. Someone loudly doubted the possibility of reaching 3,000 pounds. The figure seemed prohibitive even for a top student. The snake hissing breathing technique confirmed Guan Minghao's breakthrough to the 6th level of body tempering. The hall gasped in amazement. People in front almost lost consciousness from such coolness, and in the back stood the main character and the girl. Yang Sheng reluctantly admitted that the opponent had real strength. His dismissive tone turned into caution. Guan Minghao prepared himself, his eyes glowing white. He used the martial art bird's claw gu, a fast-paced style with an emphasis on striking power. After the impact, the pole caught fire very brightly, and the accountant stated that the blow was worth 3,100 pounds. All the students in the back were in shock. Guan Minghao challenged Yang Cheng by pointing out the gap between their levels, asking if he could feel the difference. Yang whispered to the girl about the provocation. Guan Minghao was deliberately humiliating Yang. She would have to fight and kill him later. The light guides then called out the next participant, Xiao Kui, and he immediately appeared behind the main character's shoulder. Xiao Kui asked Yang Cheng for advice on whether he should give it his all when striking or save his strength for the next stages. The man firmly ordered his brother to hit with all his might. He demanded that they show their true power, leaving no doubt about their abilities. And he came close to the pole. He began to draw energy from the air. Apparently, he was really going to give out all his strength. Someone cried out, guessing that he had reached the peak of the 6th level of body tempering. The observers gasped. Xiao Kui's progress was astounding. His growth rate exceeded all expectations. and finally he released all his energy into a blow straight into the pole, which after that burned even brighter. A confused voice came from the crowd. Had the pillar of power broken? This result seemed like a technical error or a miracle. The instructor confirmed the record 4,100 pounds, his voice shaking with amazement as he announced the phenomenal result. The crowd was amazed at Xiao Kui's superiority over Guan Minghao, and theories arose about the latter's hidden progress or unexpected weakness. Xiao Kui's father loudly took credit for his son's success, ignoring his independent efforts. His bragging disgusted many people around him. Jan looked at all this with joy, while everyone else was in shock. He then turned to the rest of the disciples and proclaimed Xiao Kui as the new king of the outer courtyard. The girl turned around and told him to calm down. Xiao was the king only for him for now. Yangcheng countered by claiming personal credit for his bro's success, insisting that it was his support that made it possible. Of the legendary 3 leaders, only Qian Lingxi remained. Everyone froze in love and anticipation of her coming to the pillar of power. Qian Lingxi stepped forward at the judge's call. Zhan took her by the shoulder and said that now it was her turn. As soon as she stepped forward, energy enveloped the ground beneath her, and then the whole air around her was full of magic and power. She slowly approached the pole. Everyone in the stands watched with bated breath, and then she suddenly directed all her energy through her fist into the pole, and just as easily finished the blow, while the pillar was still glowing brightly. Her result of 2,900 pounds caused confusion. The audience expected more, comparing it with Guan Minghao's achievement. The devoted admirer refused to admit defeat to the goddess. He confidently called her the true winner, despite the numbers. The knowledgeable protagonist explained, at the peak of level 5, 2,900 is a phenomenon. A breakthrough to level 6 would guarantee her absolute leadership. The judge called Yang Cheng, his name sounding ironic after the speeches of the outer court titans. The girl noted the man's strange confidence. His calm in the face of inevitable failure seemed inexplicable. Qian Lingxi remembered the bet. A flash of fear flashed. What if he asked for a kiss? But she immediately rejected this absurd thought. Yang Cheng started with an absurd dance before the strike. The crowd greeted this with laughter and complete bewilderment. Qian Lingxi gasped when she saw his fighting stance. It was a shock from his sudden seriousness. The crunch of the man's bones stunned everyone. Such a sound only occurred when the bones were completely purified, a sign of the 5th level of tempering. Wen was furious. He thought that Yang was only at the 1st level of tempering. Yu Mushu clenched her fists. She realized the deception. Yang Cheng deliberately hid his true strength. Guan Minghao rejected the reality of the 5th level. He accused Yan of using temporary pills, and having called the result a fake, he realized that this bastard was no match for him anyway. The impact created a vortex of energy, and the pillar of power cracked under pressure that no one had ever seen before. Everything was in smoke from the force of the blow that Yang Cheng directed at the test pole, and it lit up with a bright light, brighter than all the others. Recorded 3,500 pounds. Confident passage of the stage. The instructor's voice trembled, announcing the incredible result. Wen acknowledged his physical superiority, sarcastically noting that brute force is not the most important thing in a real fight. Now, having received the highest mark, Ian turned to the girl and waved to her. The man looked around the stands for Qian Lingxi. The girl disappeared immediately after his blow, avoiding the bet. He loudly promised to find her, reminding her of the inevitability of the kiss, ignoring her attempts to hide. At this time, Qian Lingxi ran through the forest and screamed her hatred for liars. She firmly refused to kiss the deceiver, calling the bet invalid. The scene changed. Now Ian stood proudly in front of his brother and beamed. The whole crowd was in shock. Yang Cheng's incredible progress shocked everyone. From the 1st level of body tempering to the 5th level in just half a month. It seemed impossible. The elders declared the end of the 1st round. The participants who passed were allowed to proceed to the next stage, scheduled for the morning. The scene changed, and now they were in some beautiful house at sunset. Xiaoqi asked his brother about the format of tomorrow's test. He suggested individual matches, although he was not sure. Yang Cheng called for no holding back in battles. He ordered to beat everyone who caused hostility, rejecting the tactics of modesty. Xiao stood up and asked, "Will Grandpa really come to their ceremony tomorrow?" The man nodded when asked about his grandfather. The confidence in his appearance at the ceremony sounded unexpectedly firm. The scene switched to a meeting of masters. 2 influential men exchanged appraising glances. The head of the Guan family flatteringly praised the depth of Yuan Min's skill. His tone betrayed a calculated flattery. Introduced Yuan Ming, the master of the White Tiger Pavilion. He was nostalgic about the joint training sessions of the past. Guan the Elder asked for patronage for his son. Yuan Ming promised to personally take Guan Minghao as his disciple after the exam. The father ordered Guan Minghao to pay his respects. The future disciple bowed his head to his new master. Guan Minghao formally greeted the master. Yuan Ming graciously allowed him to rise, satisfied with the deal. The head of the Guan family hinted to Yuan Ming about his role as an observer in the third round. His request for leniency towards Minghao was obvious. Yuan Ming reassured Guan. Minghao's strength and technique would guarantee that he would pass the test without any difficulty. Guan Minghao's father confidently declared his son's right to the dragon pill. The scene changed to the next day of exams. The father praised his sons for their results. He conveyed a message from his grandfather. After the exam, he could return home for a short time. The brothers were delighted to see their grandfather. Their faces expressed genuine relief and joy. But only Xiao. My father passed on my grandfather's orders, not to reveal all my potential yet. The start of the second round, the trial of the heart, has been announced. The whole crowd of students did not understand. What does this test mean? The old man decided to demonstrate what the test consisted of. He raised his hand, and now some kind of glowing sphere was flying towards him, and it left behind a huge trail of energetic glow. All the people around were shocked by such power. The instructor explained the rules. To enter the formation of tempering the heart. To pass 5 levels of illusions, keeping the clarity of mind, means to pass the test. Everyone began to slowly enter the portal, and of course Jan was among them. He entered and immediately found himself in some kind of forest. The guy looked around, because this location was completely unknown to him. At that moment, various monsters and animals began to attack him around him. Yang Cheng looked down on the first illusion. He broke it with ease, demonstrating his willpower. The first level of the test was passed instantly. The man chuckled, calling it too easy. The second one was also completed quickly and easily. And the third one too. The main character even managed to get bored during this test. She watched her success with disbelief. The ease with which he passed the level raised doubts. But as soon as he entered her, what was inside pleasantly surprised him. In the illusion space, the elder sister and Qian Liangxi appeared. She called out to Yang Cheng, her voice unexpectedly soft. Another came closer, saying that his success deserved a reward. The girl promised to kiss the man. The scene changed. The old man and the others looked at the hole in the ceiling and waited. At this time, unsuccessful students dropped out of it, and they fell to the floor. The gray old man nearby twirled his gray beard and said that it was a complete failure. Shenlingxi's father and the Green Dragon courtyard master were standing nearby, discussing how one of his disciples had quickly passed 4 levels. He had a strong heart. Father said that although he is young, he has to go through many difficulties. It is too early to say whether he will become great in the future. He said that many cultivators strive for combat, but forget about the heart of martial arts. But if a high-level cultivator stops training his martial heart, something bad will happen. The man next to me said that these were very wise words, but he also listed that many students had already passed 3 levels, but one Yang Chen got into trouble. He stood in the room of illusions. In it, his little sister approached him and fervently asked him to come closer, so that she could help him with his training. Jan tried to get away from this fake, but his sister insisted. She suggested that he try double cultivation. This attracted the main character. He really wanted to try it. And now she sat down on the bed and grabbed Jan, pulling him towards herself. In the haze, it was clear that her clothes were changing slightly and disappearing. She pulled him towards her and tried to kiss him, asking him to do it together. But suddenly, some strange feeling distracted him, and he stopped before kissing the hot, red-haired girl. Yang Chen placed his hand on her face and stopped this kiss completely. He pulled away from her and said she wasn't real. At this point, the girl disappeared, and Jan only managed to sit down on the bed when another one came up. She sat down next to him, putting her hand on his, and said that she had lost the bet. Now he could kiss her as much as he wanted and wherever he wanted. This made John very embarrassed. He took her hand, and this beautiful girl came closer and closer to the main character, trying to kiss him. Her father had been watching this all this time. He probably didn't like it. The guy in yellow approached him and said that the beauty test was completely normal, and now Yang Chen was reaching out to kiss the beautiful girl. When suddenly he stopped. He pushed her away and told her to wait. But the girl was offended and asked Chen, Did he really not like her at all? Yang Chen immediately activated the Heavenly Sutra technique and began to cast energy in his hands. Suddenly, the girl was covered in ice, and then it split open. The illusion disappeared. The fourth level was completed, and Ian breathed a sigh of relief. Another student opened the doors, and in this test he came across 3 beautiful dancers. He was very interested in them. Suddenly, he put his hand inside his bosom and turned to the girls so that they would look at him. He took out the item that the master gave him to restrain himself and resist the illusion, and so he passed the 4th level. Young Chen had already moved on, and in front of him there was a small bridge across the river. On the other side of the bridge, skeletons were crawling out, and there were even evil skulls in the air. Jan was shocked. Only girls can influence him, and these illusions of skeletons cannot. He ordered them to disappear. That's how he passed the 5th level. The scene changed. The master looked at all this with inspiration. The man next to him enjoyed Jan's incredibly strong and unprecedented spirit, surpassing all the cadets of the 4 pavilions of the inner court. Sadoy emphasized the exceptional nature of the guy, who was able to undergo the intermediate tempering of the heart at such a young age. The youth acknowledged the elder's rightness, realizing the terrifying difficulty of the intermediate tempering of the heart test. Within the illusion, Yang assumed that this was a heart-tempering artifact and decided to try to understand its structure. The boy's intention was focused on comprehending the secrets of the heart tempering itself. The observer considered it audacious for the youth to attempt to understand heart tempering without mastering the basic patterns. The clear pattern was seen by the observer as an excellent opportunity for learning. The scene changed. The first participant successfully completed the heart tempering test and came out. Guan Minghao was the first to pass the heart tempering test, as expected. Xiao Kui and Qian Lingxi followed him, taking 2nd and 3rd place respectively. The rest also did not linger and ran out of the portal. However, Xiao stood there, looking at the exit and thinking, what's wrong with his brother? Where is he? At that moment, the flash opened slightly, and our main character flew out of it. Yang Chen, as expected, was the last participant to emerge from the challenge. Despite the passage, the comrade was surprised by Yang Chen's strong delay, asking about the reason. But instead of explaining, Jan whispered about their upcoming wealth, overcome with enthusiasm. One of them interrupted the conversation about wealth, promising to tell later and calling for silence. The instructor began to speak. The next stage was soon. The 3rd stage of the inner courtyard test for qualified participants has been announced. They walked, leading a huge number of students straight to the building. The 4 spirit towers were introduced as an important structure of the Chaogate court for the 3rd stage of testing. The Lord of the White Tiger Pavilion announced that only the lower 5 floors of the tower would be opened for testing. They clarified that passing the 1st floor gives qualification, and to reach the top 10, you need to go higher. One of the participants declared the futility of the efforts of others, asserting his right to 1st place. Immediately, the man with the scar announced the start of the tests. Jan quickly entered the portal, and I found myself again in the forest. Again in an unfamiliar forest. Nothing was clear. Some idiot ninja with a sword crawled out in front of him and was about to attack. He screamed death curses at the protagonist, who stood in complete shock. After all, he was a very weak ninja, only the 2nd level of tempering. With one blow, he sent that fool ninja into space. Then some 3rd-level wolf monster immediately crawled out. But he was also sent far away into the bushes with one blow. Such is the strength of the main character. All the elders watched this adventure near the tower. Observers were surprised by the quick passage of the 3rd stage, assuming that it was Guan Minghao. They emphasized Guan Minghao's superiority, as most were still struggling on the 1st floor. At this time, the man with the scar was loudly shouting that while everyone was at the 1st level of the killing formation, Guan was already at the 3rd. The scene switched to this genius, who was already taking a blow from the claws to the body. But suddenly energy appeared from the cut and sent the wolf back into the stratosphere. Guan boasted that he easily passed the 2nd level thanks to the armor from his teacher. Thus, he will pass the entire test better than everyone else. The scene changed. A cry of surprise was heard about the appearance of someone on the 3rd floor of the ancient tower. Observers speculated that it was Qian Lingxi and Xiao Kui who were keeping up with Guan Minghao's pace. The 3rd floor of the ancient pagoda became the site of a new test. 2 samurai suits stood in the corridor. Jan entered the room from the portal and immediately noticed them. Just like them, the samurai's eyes lit up, and they immediately began to attack him, trying to kill him. Yan noted the incredible speed, comparable to a quadruple tempered body doll. He fixed his gaze on the blow that was aimed at cutting off his head. Fighting two dolls turned out to be more difficult than passing the 5th level of tempering. And now he had to activate the heavenly writing technique. The boy discovered that after the heavenly sutra, the samurai began to slow down. But you still need to be careful and watch every blow, and also to strike in time, which is what Yang Chen did to the samurai. And both puppets flew away from the main character. The blow was so strong. The 3rd level was completed. The guy praised his heavenly scripture, which improved his vision and slowed down his opponents. And so he entered the 4th floor, on which were 2 huge creatures that clearly loved more than just honey. The appearance of 2 5th-level body-tempering bears created a complicated situation. The scene changed. Everyone noticed that someone had broken through to the 4th floor, and they thought that Guan Minghao was simply a miracle. At this time, the elder Red Sister was watching everything and had a question. Was it really Guan Minghao and not Yang Chen? Suddenly, a bunch of energy and a guy flew out of the portal on the 1st floor. He landed next to an old man who said that those who had not passed the 1st level had left, and the rest continued the test. This year, less than 200 people entered the inner courtyard, less than usual. Despite the small number of participants, observers noted an unprecedented concentration of young talent this year. Scarred One commented sharply that getting injured would render even a successful student useless. An hour later, the elders reported that there were 5 more participants from the testing tower. Suddenly, another participant in red flew out from some floor. It was Situ Ping. Sit Ping unexpectedly failed to make it past the 3rd floor, leaving only 4 brave souls inside. Among the remaining ones, they named Guan Minghao, Xiaokui, Chen Lingxi, and asked about the 4th one. One of them turned and ordered to quickly find who has not yet come out, who is left in the tower. It was discovered that the 4th participant who did not come out was Yang Chen himself, causing surprise. Even Wen's girlfriend looked at all this and thought, damn, Yang Chen has become really good. The appearance of Qian Lingxi, safe and sound, left observers completely perplexed. She landed on the ground gently and carefully, really not a single scratch. At this time, Yang Chen was fighting with 2 huge bears. He threw stones at them, and while one of them was screaming in pain, the second one would immediately run up for a new attack. Taking cover from rocks and blows, Jan found the ordeal incredibly difficult to overcome. He decided to use the badge against the particularly insidious creatures in his path, and then he soared into the air, and the energy of fire began to cover everything around. Burning bears quickly is a terrifying sight, but it is necessary to win. After one threat had been eliminated, there was mockery of the sun and admiration for the wisdom of martial arts. The pursued participant angrily promised to deal with his opponent, refusing to play catch-up. At the same time, the 4th floor caused great difficulties for Guan. Despite doubts about the passage and the fact that he was completely beaten, the character confidently assumed his leadership. Now someone has already climbed all the way to the 5th floor, and a second later the second person was already on the 5th floor. Such strong fighters. The scene has changed. A minute ago, someone broke through to the 5th floor of the 4-Spirit Tower. Observers confidently attributed the breakthrough to the 5th floor to Guan Minghao, recognizing him as a genius. Some people doubted that it was Guan Minghao who reached the 5th floor first. Scar then asked QG who he thought had broken through, to which he replied that it was hard for him to say. A proposal followed to make a bet on this unexpected dispute. The mustachioed man turned around and asked with interest, "What's the bet?" As a bet, one of the disputants demanded the opponent's student in case of victory. The second participant in the dispute put his opponent's blood-drinking blade on the line. It was suddenly discovered that 2 participants had climbed up to the 5th floor. Scar looked at it and was sure that it was Guan, who at that time was swinging for a strong blow. And it hit the huge bear right in the eye, who didn't like it. And with pain and screams, he threw Guan back a couple dozen meters. Blood gushed from the mouth in a huge and powerful stream, and it was already all over the body. But Guan still thought that he would come first. Suddenly, a man flew out from the 4th level. It was Guan himself. From below, a scarred teacher yelled at him, giving him armor that made it impossible to get injured. Another elder caught the seriously injured boy. Imagine the crowd's amazement when it turned out to be Guan Minghao himself. It became clear that Yang Chen and Xiaokui were the ones left on the 5th floor, causing one of the disputants to laugh. The yellow-robed elder's exclamations expressed shock at Yang Chen's presence on the 5th floor, and Scar himself looked at his wayward student with particular malice. And I had to give up my blade because an argument is an argument. At this time, the Red Sister watched all this and couldn't believe that Yang Chen had reached the 5th floor. The boy faced the power of 2 5th-level earth-tempering bears, which he was unable to injure. But even so, they could not keep up with his monstrous speed. Xiao also dealt seriously with the monsters on the level, even though he was very tired and exhausted from the battles. After 15 minutes of tense waiting, the 2 participants finally left the tower. The observer noted that both were unharmed after the 5th floor, and the mustachioed man acknowledged their strength and Yang Chen's hidden talents. And not only he, but even other students were delighted with the main character. Yang Chen stood in the crowd of people admiring him and noticed how his beloved was looking at him. He almost passed by her when suddenly she turned to the main character. The man announced the end of the tests. 198 people entered the inner courtyard ratings later. Xiao confidently predicted that Brother Chen would take first place in this test. After discussion, Guan Minghao was named first in the Great Trial rankings. Some time passed, and Scar dictated their rankings for this challenge. Xiao Qi got second place. Everyone was shocked. Chen Lingxi is the third, even more unclear. And in the end, he left Yang Chen confused about Guan Minghao's superiority. A sharp response to the doubts followed, accusing the questioners of lacking vision and knowledge of the true leader. Yang began to protest angrily, because if the evaluators had not been blind, they would have given first place to his brother Xiao. And so, between Scar and the main character, a very tough conflict began. Yang announced the results aggressively. Xiao Kui was in the lead in the tests of strength, heart, and ancient pagoda. Guan Minghao placed 3rd, 4th, and 4th in the same tests, respectively. Scar was angry. Why was the young man arguing with him? Yang accused the examiners of being bribed by the Guan family, calling the situation unfair. Everyone around tensed up at this statement. And Scar was completely furious. Fire was burning around him, and the ground beneath the protagonist's feet shook. The main character immediately stood up and activated the heavenly scripture. Scar said angrily that the swordsman would be disqualified for the inner court, which caused Xiao to protest about Yang's superiority over Guan Minghao. The situation was described as a real rebellion against an unfair decision. Some expressed sympathy for the unyielding Yang Chen and Xiao Kui. Yan and Xiao's father silently watched this entire conflict situation without interfering. Scar became even more angry and said that in that case, Xiao Kui would also be expelled from the academy. This made the talented blonde warrior furious, and he released his aura to fight. But Yan immediately stopped him, saying that they didn't have enough strength right now to defeat the corrupt bastard. The academy officially canceled Xiao Kui's qualification for 2nd place. The reason for the cancellation was announced, allegedly for disrespect and unworthy behavior of a swordsman. The new seats were distributed as follows: Yu Lingxi, 2nd, Situ Ping, 3rd, Qian Lingxi, 4th. He threatened to expel anyone who dared to challenge her decision. He stood there, breathing heavily with anger, and next to him stood the very teacher who had won the argument with him. All the students stood around and pitied Yang Chen. He was in an unfair situation. Immediately, the main character and Xiao were approached by their evil older sister in red. She sharply asked the man if he understood the consequences of his actions. The main character called her cute when she was angry, and the girl reproached the guy for laughing after the disqualification and conflict with the head of the pavilion. The man claimed he had no need to join the inner court after the unfair test. The girl was outraged by his attitude, noticing a strange jump in his strength over half a month. She directly asked him how he had reached the 5th level of body tempering so quickly. The guy jokingly explained the progress by studying her picture book from the beginning of the manga every day. This confused and angered the sister even more. Suddenly, someone in armor approached them and spoke to Yang Chen and Xiao Kui. General Li Yashan, the commander of the defense of Chaogui, arrived. The girl was surprised by the unexpected appearance of her father, the general. The general explained that he had come to personally meet 2 promising personnel. The general invited Yang Chen to join the Blue Tiger Army after he was expelled from the academy. The boy politely thanked the general for the offer, promising to consult with his family. The general praised the boy's actions, confirming the openness of the Blue Tiger Army. The general whispered to his daughter that this young man was worthy of becoming his son-in-law. The girl was embarrassed by her father's words and said that he was up to his old tricks again. Suddenly, Xiao came up to him and said that since MC didn't get into the academy, they should join the army together. The boy refused, advising him to use his resources and talent for the inner court. As soon as Yang started to run away, Xiao approached him and asked where he had gone. The man announced his intention to find the person who had promised him a kiss, the fox. Xiao was immediately dissatisfied, because even though his brother was an adult, he still thought about girls. He explained that he was going to a family connected with his future education. Her father was his teacher. Xiao was shocked. Since when did Yang Chen even have a mentor? The scene changed. The guy arrived at Quan Hanqing's residence. The head of the White Tiger Pavilion was surprised by the appearance of the disqualified youth. The man asked the boy if he knew the status of the place and the reasons for his visit. In response, Yang asked, "What is he doing here?" "Yang Chen's master lives here." The leader was shocked. Could it be that this young man was trained by Qianbo Guang? Unbelievable. And Jan left him in shock at the gate, entering the courtyard, answering that yes, he was studying with him. The old man attributed Yang Chen's recent progress to his training with this master. It became necessary to urgently inform the master of the guest's arrival. Upon entering, the boy immediately saw his master and turned to him, seeing what he was doing. The master sat near some building and meditated, spreading his energy around. Jan noted the incredibly strong pressure emanating from the master's training site. Suddenly, the gray-haired man appeared at Jan's side in a second and finally greeted him. In response, the protagonist began to bow, but the master asked him to sit down quickly and discuss everything. The young man paid his respects to the master, admiring his high level of swordsmanship. The master also sat down opposite him and immediately asked a question. Does he still want to learn? The guy immediately nodded in agreement. He really wants to study. But after taking a sip of strong tea, Bo Guang said that the boy was still too weak to learn. The master said that he heard the chief judge the boy's heart strength as insufficient for his level. But Jan politely stopped the master and decided to tell him everything as it was. Some time passed after the story was told. It was already deep into the night. After hearing the story, the master was shocked. How dare Yuan Ming behave like that? The guy expressed disagreement with the results, recalling the passage of the 5th stage. The master condemned the provocative behavior of the teacher of the martial arts style being demonstrated. It is a disgrace. Yang immediately asked the master why he didn't expel Yuan Ming from the academy. The master explained that he had no power over the academy and lived there as a guest. He called the request for help cowardice, asking the boy if he considered himself a coward. The boy acknowledged the master's unreliability, but pointed to Umin's power in the inner court. The master ordered the disciple to defeat Umin in the future. After all, no one dares to mock his disciples. Jan was shocked by his master's unusual thinking. The young man asked the master about further actions. The master advised him to prove his rightness by force in this world. The guy asked permission to train in this place. Suddenly, they were frightened by a loud, angry female voice that screamed, "No!" Lindsay objected to allowing the boy to stay. The master insisted on the student's stay, entrusting him with the yard work. He added that in the future all duties would pass to the boy. Yang Chen smiled at the girl, but she became even more angry, admitting that she couldn't do anything. The young man asked when he would begin learning how to carve patterns. The master ordered to first study all the jade tablets in the office. The guy agreed to read them all night without interruption, and a second later he was already opening the gates to the home library. When he saw the interior, his eyes immediately widened, because there was just a pile of bundles and books around him. He wouldn't be able to read them all even in his entire life. The scene changed to a night sky strewn with stars. Yang was still sitting and studying each scroll. It was very difficult. His whole body was surrounded by energy as he was inspired and read these teachings. Suddenly, he heard this girl praise the taste of the soup and offer to eat it together. He immediately looked out of the door and looked at the girl with the soup. The young man asked if Qian Lingxi had brought him some soup. The girl was surprised by his presence and asked if he was going to live here. The guy asked the master to allow him to train here and reminded him of the bet. He asked directly if the girl was ready to fulfill the terms of their bet. Qian Lingxi immediately thrust a hot plate into his hands, and then, as she was leaving, she told him to just drink the soup. He was surprised by her embarrassment over a simple kiss. The young man opened the lid and noted the pleasant aroma of food, and I immediately decided to try it. After the first sip, the guy's eyes lit up. It was very tasty, and in a moment the plate was already empty. Jan has a brutal appetite. After his feast, the boy went outside and said he had hiccups, but he was immediately kicked back into the library. The master ordered the boy not to go out until he mastered the first pattern. The guy assumed that the master had deliberately given him a difficult task, and he sat down on the floor of the library further on to continue reading the teachings. Half a month of hard training passed. The guy was already quite strong, and his aura also changed its color to a darker fire. He learned to put a fire pattern seal, and now an explosion from this seal appeared before him. Quite interesting. The boy successfully created the pattern, causing a flash of fire, which amazed the master. After all, he did it in just half a month. Yang Chen is a very capable student. The girl was shocked by his speed of learning, comparing it to her month. The master allowed me to leave the office and ordered me to study the gravity pattern. The boy boasted to Qian Lingxi about his invincible talent. The girl acknowledged his luck and efforts, and then the guy reminded them about the time to fulfill their bet. The girl angrily ordered the boy to return to his studies until he mastered the gravity pattern. The guy confidently stated that the girl should just wait for him. Another half-month of hard training passed. The man happily informed the master that he had successfully mastered the pattern. But suddenly something caught his attention and worried him. It was the beautiful Lindsay, standing in her blue fur coat, catching snow with her hands. Yang Chen immediately walked up to her and asked Qian Lingxi if they wanted to grow old together. The girl cut him off abruptly, ordering him not to spoil the scenery. The master standing nearby found their behavior very childishly funny. The guy retorted that youth is good and noted his and the girl's joint efforts at night. The master was outraged by the impudence of the youth, who dared to participate in the sacrifice first. But suddenly something caught his attention. He looked up at the sky, and I saw a huge golden bird. It was clearly someone's sign. It became clear that Bianjing Wuyuan was in serious trouble. Yang Chen looked up and couldn't understand. What was this? The boy asked the master about the big golden bird Luan and the man on it. He inquired about the purpose of the visit of the guests from Bianjing Wuyuan. The master explained the proximity of the cities and their long tradition of martial arts. They mentioned the tradition of talent tests and gambling disputes between the cities. Yang Chen smiled and said that this was a real test. The master suggested looking at Bianjing's talented students, ordering Yang Chen to accompany Lingxi. The scene changed. A call went out for the representatives of Kyoge Mukan to welcome the guests. Guan asked his scarred master what it was and pointed to a bird in the sky. Scar recognized the golden bird, Bianjing Wuyuan, and was surprised by Liu's imminent arrival. An order was given to gather all the newcomers of the inner court. The action took place in the outer courtyard square. Ian walked with Lingxi and made his way through the crowd closer to the bird, pushing everyone around him. And then in the crowd he met his favorite blonde guy, his brother Xiao Kui. The boy asked about the situation after the huge spirit beast appeared. Xiao expressed envy towards the majestic mount and announced the arrival of the pavilion leader. Jan looked at the golden bird again and thought that someday he might have an animal like that. Suddenly everyone turned around because the master of the pavilion was already here. And indeed all three masters arrived. The scarred one, the mustachioed one, and the guy in yellow. Guests from Bianjing Wuyuan were invited to the inner court for recreation and competition. And one of the guests jumped off his bird. The guests abandoned formalities, declaring the futility of ceremonies before the tests. They suggested that the fights begin immediately, doubting the host's abilities. The parties agreed to begin the competition without delay. The rules were set. 5 fighters from each school, one-on-one fights. The winner stays on the field. The loser is eliminated until the team loses 5 times. Scar noted Bianjing's aggressiveness and the fact that they had an exceptional fighter. The Chaogay representative objected, pointing out the numerical advantage of his disciples. And so he agreed to do everything exactly as the guest said. So now this visitor ordered his disciples to go down, and they quickly began to jump off the bird. Very cool and impressive. Yang Chen observed and acknowledged that there were several real geniuses among the guests. When the girl asked about the source of his knowledge, he referred to his own intuition. The master warned the fighters from another region about the need to control the force of their blows. Guan stood and looked at this angrily, and his people around him already wanted to give these upstarts a couple of lessons. But despite all the discontent, the head of the inner courtyard announced that the training exchange of experience between Chao and Bianjing would now begin. Bianjing's disciples walked forward proudly and without fear of anyone. The first to speak was Chu Ming, who introduced himself and said that he had a 5th-level body. Scar immediately pointed out to Situ Ping that he would be the first to fight, and his opponent was this guy in yellow. And they stood in the middle of the square, preparing for battle. Situ Ping took his stance, a very strong fighter, and then the enemy suddenly rushed at him, activating his lion fighting spirit. Everyone around was shocked by the power and energy of the fire attribute and the strength of spirit of this fighter. Yan noted that the inconspicuous youth turned out to be a master of the heavenly path of fire. The pavilion leaders stood and noted that their arrogance was not unfounded. They really did have powerful students this year. Situ tried to block the attack of this crazy fire warrior, but the force of the blow was such that the guy immediately flew back. The guy was very pleased with himself. He immediately showed them a masterclass, and now he stood confidently in a fighting stance in front of the beaten Situ. Suddenly, the red-clad fighter demonstrated the power of the invincible diamond art technique, and now they were approaching each other, preparing to deliver incredibly powerful blows. Their fists were rapidly approaching, and it was anyone's guess whose energy and fighting spirit would win. The winner was the guy in yellow. Situ Ping flew back again. A foreign disciple crushed Situ, who possessed the invincible diamond art. This surprised the leader. Now the guy stood in front of Situ again and said that this was the end of it. But he didn't want to admit his defeat, so the guy activated the fire on his hand again. The referee stopped the fight, demanding that the loss be acknowledged due to excessive violence. Yellow stopped his fire and said that they were all such sissies here. Someone in the crowd was outraged by the need to win at any cost. There followed agreement with the madness of the demands. Yang Chen looked at this and said that he couldn't just stand there, it was too arrogant and harsh. Lingxi said that Yang himself was even more arrogant than his opponent, to which Yang Chen thanked her for the compliment. He explained the difference in behavior with strangers and his own. With strangers he is arrogant, but with his own he behaves better than anyone. The girl promised to use him as a training dummy, and taking the hint, the guy told the girl to forget everything he said. At this time, Scar announced that Guan Minghao would be the next fighter. Guan Minghao was introduced as the first fighter from the Chao Gei inner court. The enemy sarcastically doubted his strength, causing laughter from Yan, who was watching the fight and was already rooting for Guan's opponent. But still, to maintain morale, he had to say that he was rooting for him. Guan immediately activated his fighting spirit and struck the ground, and he stood in a fighting stance and directed his furious gaze at his opponent, who joyfully summoned his lion's fighting spirit and looked at the enemy with a smile. Guan immediately flew forward to hit the bastard, but he quickly dodged, which left Guan simply in shock. Yang Chen and Lingxi in the stands noted the incredible speed and agility of the opponent's plump fighter. Now Guan stood behind his opponent, who already knew what to do next to win. Guan struck again, but it was to no avail. Each strike was too slow. The guy realized that he had hit not a guy, but just air, an illusion. But when he realized this, it was already too late. The guy was standing behind him and waving his fiery fist, and he hit the guy in the back. These are the kind of treacherous students who came to fight ours. But something surprised the guy. Something was wrong. At the place where the blow was, a hole was left in Guan's clothes, through which golden magic armor could be seen. An accusation arose that Guan Minghao was using the forbidden Lingbao internal armor. The scarred man justified himself to everyone for not knowing that his student was wearing something like that. But still, the command was given that forced Guan to leave the battlefield. He was disqualified. The firefighter chuckled and suggested that the remaining 3 fighters from Chaoge continue the fight. Everyone else was not thrilled by their opponent's enthusiasm. After Guan Minghao's defeat, doubts arose about Chaoge's ability to field a new fighter. The firefighter boldly laughed at the fact that everyone here was such weaklings. Scar was outraged by the guests' insolence, reminding them of Xiao Kui's presence. Everyone immediately turned to look at the blonde, who stood with his eyes closed and with his whole appearance expressing his disinterest in this event. Scar nervously announced that Xiao Kui was coming out to continue the fight. The swordsman withdrew from the fight, citing serious internal injuries from training. Scar was simply shocked by such a sudden refusal. There was some irony about the White Tiger Pavilion's dependence on the exiled Yang Chen. It was recalled that the decision to fight Xiao Kui rests with the head of his pavilion. Now Scar once again gave the order to Qian Lingxi to take the field in place of the injured fighter, and the girl calmly walked out in her signature outfit with a blue fur coat. Yang Chen shouted after her that she could ask him to help her at any moment. The opponent made an indecent comment about the girl's appearance before the fight. Qian Lingxi was introduced as a 5th-level master of body tempering. A foreign fighter offered the girl to spend the night with him instead of fighting. Someone's angry cry demanded that the impudent man be dealt with. It was Yang Chen. The girl activated her magic, and immediately some kind of seal with a snowflake formed under the guy. He was in shock. The bastard looked at his feet in shock. He couldn't believe that the girl was a master of patterns and ice. The guests were surprised by the presence of a formation master in the Kyogi Academy, but after tearing off his leg, the guy contemptuously assessed the level of skill as useless. Xianlingzi used the fierce cold formation technique. The guy was in shock. He couldn't move and just waited for the blow. The guest insulted her as an idiot for using this technique. Ice was already spreading along the firefighter's leg, and a couple of seconds later the ice covered him completely, up to his head. Xianlingzi calmly said that it was easy. Wait for the next opponent. The audience admired Sister Lindsay's skill and supported her. The guy asked his brother if he was impressed by his daughter-in-law. The brother recalled that he had previously called her only a backup option. He changed his mind, calling the girl a real daughter-in-law, to which Xiao quipped about unrequited affection. The ice-cold fighter was finally carried away from the battlefield. He was already useless. Someone else was already running to the square. Everyone around was shocked by the sight of this man. This guy had a huge sword on his back, almost like a berserker. Bianjing Wuyuan's new fighter Chu Pan was introduced. Lindsay immediately waved her magic, and a lot of energy has already been sent into the enemy's face. But suddenly he reached back with his hand and grabbed the hilt of the sword. The next second he took it out and inserted it into the ground, filling it with energy. Lindsay remained unperturbed and continued to infuse her punches with energy. The aura around him changed its color to red, and the enemy activated the technique of the first sword, killing. A moment later, he was already running towards her and was preparing to chop her down. The head of the pavilion saw this and realized that now they could lose again. And the girl simply covered herself with her hands a moment before the inevitable blow from the huge sword. But the opponent stopped and invited the female master to join him, calling it a rare opportunity. Xianlingzi warned that continuing the fight could lead to their mutual death, and an ominous red aura spread around them on the floor. The observer noted the power of the formation technique used by the girl. She confirmed the deadly danger of the technique, and then she immediately rejected his superiority. Then she turned around and walked towards Yang Chen. The girl accused her opponent of bullying her. This surprised the guy very much. The pavilion leaders announced that there was only one fighter left for fighters above level 5. The guy volunteered to cause trouble for his opponent. Yang Chen said he was ready to go out as the next fighter, and the guy in yellow allowed him to. But Scar didn't. He asked Yang Chen about the reason for his fuss. The guy in yellow offered to give him a chance, suggesting that he help the swordsman. There were cheers of encouragement, calling Yang Chen into battle. And Yang Chen was already on the battlefield. They gave him a chance to prove himself in practice. Yang was outraged by the bullying of Qianlingshi, promising to take revenge for it. The guy with the bandage on his head was overcome with rage after these words. Yang Chen's appearance caused panic among the spectators who predicted defeat. A debate ensued about the necessity of his admission after the defeat of other strong fighters. The crowd chanted this guy's name, hoping for his aggressive tactics in the fight. The opponent asked Yang Chen if he was seeking his own death. The guy countered the question by joking about the harmlessness of screaming. He openly expressed his distrust of his words. A series of insults towards the opponent followed from Yang Chen. The guy demonstratively showed his unharmed state, and the guy with the bandage quickly took out his sword and went to attack Jan. Rage overwhelmed him and he activated his second sword, Murder, to which Yang Chen activated his fighting spirit and prepared to meet the enemy face to face. His eyes changed. His aura became even bigger, and strange patterns appeared on his body. He was at the limit of his strength. And the guy immediately hit Yang Chen, so hard that he tore him into 2 pieces. Someone mistakenly reported him dead, but was immediately corrected. The guy immediately materialized out of thin air and fire, and attacked the berserker cosplayer from behind. Hitting his fire fist right in the lower back, it was very hot. And the guy flew off just like Situ did in the first round. It was revenge for everything. Yang Chen landed on his toes directly above his opponent, who had already woken up and was trying to say something nasty to Jan. But he immediately received a strong blow to the face. He was unable to finish speaking. Yana was overcome with anger and he could not stop. He continued to hit and hit his opponent. Their teacher was shocked. He asked Yang Chen to stop, but Jan said he couldn't. After all, he hadn't heard any cry that his opponent was giving up. But the teacher got angry and said that his student would not be able to say anything. Jan had broken his jaw. Yes, the guy under Jan was clearly well bruised. Jan apologized for misunderstanding the situation with the opponent's jaw injury. Lindsay also laughed at this situation. Observers noted that Yang Chen's actions had gotten out of control, prompting cries of support. Everyone around was shouting his name and supporting the fighter in every possible way. Inspired, Yang Chen asked for his next opponent. Suddenly, Zhang Hong was announced as the next fighter to teach the lesson, and he immediately jumped into the arena, right next to the bewildered Jan. And then he landed hard, sending smoke everywhere. Zhang Hong was introduced as a 6th-level master of body tempering. Jan asked in surprise that there was another such strong fighter in the academy. The opposing teacher accused Yang Chen of being unbearably arrogant. Someone expressed admiration for Yang Chen's insane courage. Zhang Hong recognized the boy's strength, worthy of his serious attitude. The question arose about the nature of the enemy's abilities. Many have speculated that he is the second master of the heavenly path. There was a suggestion that he had awakened his martial formation soul. Xiao asked again about the meaning of the term martial formation soul. They explained that his soul came with a forbidden formation, a special, powerful variety. The boy anxiously asked about his brother's condition after a tough fight. And Yan was already standing in the burning arena next to his current opponent. Yang noted the use of a forbidden cultivation technique with interest, and then closed his eyes. And he began to form some kind of fiery golden spell right in his hands. The opponent suggested that John was trying to break through the defensive line and had master status. The enemy confidently declared that it was impossible to break through his defensive line. A multitude of flying swords immediately appeared around Yan. The fighter described his moonstick technique as irresistible due to the infinity of weapons. And Ian chuckled when he heard this statement. The opponent also smiled and told Jan to enjoy his attack. And a bunch of swords flew towards the main character. But suddenly he began to spin around and grab weapons around him. So easily had he managed to repel the attack. And then, gathering a multitude of weapons in his hands, he launched them back at the enemy. The guy discovered a vulnerability in his enemy's technique, his eyes, and the sword immediately flew right past the opponent. The long-haired man expressed complete bewilderment at the unexpected breakthrough in defense. And at that moment, the protective sphere was broken and shattered like glass. Yang Chen finally announced his chance to prove himself on the battlefield and began making some kind of seal. The opponent was shocked. His legs were wrapped in a seal, and he did not expect that Yang was also a cultivation master. This caused him to experience animal fear and panic. He started screaming. The guy used the gravity tempering technique on the enemy, who was simply terrified by the feeling that he was finished. He felt a complete loss of mobility under the influence of an invisible force. He turned his gaze forward towards Yang Chen, and the main character used the Tiger Fox fist strike, enhanced with kung fu techniques. And he hit him hard in the face, so hard that his skull was most likely deformed. From such a blow, the enemy flew straight to the feet of his master. The teachers were amazed by the boy's ability to break Zhang Hong's forbidden technique. He acknowledged the unexpected emergence of an outstanding talent in the Song and Wu Academy. Guan also had mistrust of the man's incredible strength. Wen and his girlfriend recognized Yan as a formation master, and the man was angry. And the crowd loved him even more and began to chant his name. The guy called out the next fighter, Bianjing Wu Yuan, calling him a brat. The representative stated the defeat of the strongest and the hopelessness of those remaining. Then the master mockingly asked if there was even one combat-ready person left in the academy. Zhan declared that his strength was sufficient to defeat all opponents. They countered that a team defeat did not prove the strength of Chaogay Academy. Scar reminded them of the rules of the competition, demanding that they be recognized. The opponent acknowledged the rules but insisted on his version of the truth. They suggested changing the battle format to continue the test. Scar rejected the decision for himself, and Jan challenged his brother to be the next fighter. Xiao immediately agreed to his brother's terms and stepped forward. They passed each other, exchanging their places. The guy challenged the two remaining opponents at once. The teacher was outraged by the incredible impudence of this challenge. The elder ordered two fighters to attack together. The fighter doubted the fairness of such a 2-against-1 fight. The elder ordered not to reason, but to carry out the order to attack. And the two idiots immediately took their swords in their hands and ran towards Xiao, who reached for his sword. And in a second he took it out and stood up, preparing for a crushing blow. The guys were already very close and were already swinging their katanas. But Xiao struck faster. His katana left behind an energy trail. And in a second, both idiots' swords were broken. They were in shock. And their teacher was even more shocked, as he probably bought these swords with his own money. And after some time, Jan was already seeing them off, inviting them to fly in next time for a rematch. And at this time, all the beaten upstarts were already climbing onto their flying bird transport. and they quickly flew away from the square, leaving the warriors to only look at them with their heads raised. And as soon as they were out of sight, the whole crowd began to laugh and have fun. Yang Chen and Xiao became local heroes who were able to defeat the strongest fighters from another country in a couple of blows. The master of Qinglong Pavilion canceled the punishment and invited the boy to come to him. The guy still demanded an explanation for his unfair expulsion from the academy. This question took the pavilion master by surprise. The Qinglong Pavilion master suggested that Yang Chen forget the previous trial and enter his pavilion with compensation. He asked skeptically if the standoff was over. The Lord of the White Tiger Pavilion accused the swordsman of disrespecting the academy's rules. The guy was not at all surprised by this proposal. He recalled his unjust exile without fault after the last battle. Everyone around was in shock. He announced numerous offers from other schools and his final departure from the academy. And while all the elders stood and looked angrily at the main character, who, whistling a melody, calmly left the square, leaving everyone in bewilderment. The chief called both guys incredibly stubborn in their decision. And now he looked back at the other elders, who had allowed such promising warriors to leave their academy. Scar asked a caustic question about the meaning of their return after the show of force. The guy boldly asked the head of the pavilion if he dared to punish them. This really angered the old fart, and he soared into the air on the energy of fire, which made Xiao and Yan tense up. Mr. Scard regarded this as a deliberate provocation on their part. Suddenly, a girl named Lindsay stood between them and asked the old man if he really intended to humiliate them. He ordered Lindsay to stand down, declaring his intention to strip them of their powers for disrespect, to which the girl said that he would greatly regret his decision. The old man indignantly called what was happening absolute absurdity, and that in such an academy, even with her dad, she could not tell him how to teach students. Just then her father appeared over the old Scar, and he began to slowly descend. Everyone around bowed to the Lord Swordsman, which has already finally landed on the ground. The old man tucked his tail between his legs like a cowardly dog and began to justify himself to the Holy Lord, saying that it was all a long story. But the man only moved his sleeve, and the old fart immediately fell to the ground with force. That's the punishment for such behavior. Grandfather began to scream from anger and pain, and his father ordered him to shut up and get out of there quickly. Jan really liked this whole action. The pavilion leader turned around and said that the Lord was too angry, but it was true. They would resolve the misunderstanding with his disciple. The Lord turned and asked if they wanted to compensate for the damage. The pavilion leader said that they would start thinking about what they could do to satisfy the Lord and Yang Chen. In response, the Lord said that he was not entirely sure whether these elders could still practice cultivation. The leader apologized again and said that he would explain the whole situation to the president and Scar, and also compensate for the damage. And having heard an answer that satisfied him, the Lord said goodbye and left through the air. The pavilion leader closed his eyes and thought that he had heard about this guy's serious injury. He didn't even think that he had such strength. He walked up to Scar and ordered him to get up and go to the president. The scene changed. Night fell. Yang Chen entered the door of Lingxi's father's manor again. It was a library where the master sat and meditated, training his aura. John greeted the master and asked him to teach him how to cultivate the simplest volts. And then the master opened one eye and asked, "Does the guy really want to learn a couple of fighting techniques?" Yang Chen was inspired and quickly agreed to this proposal. The man said that he would not teach him martial arts until he reached the true martial realm. John turned away and quietly said that his master was too greedy. For this, the master hit him right on the head. He will talk less. He explained, "The kingdom of hardening the body is needed to strengthen the body in martial arts. Therefore, it is too early for Yan. He cannot jump above his head." He turned around and said that he wanted to teach him cultivation techniques earlier, but Yang's own techniques were too unusual and effective. He was talking about the Heavenly Sutra. The master said that the most important thing is cultivation techniques, and fighting and martial arts techniques will appear on their own over time. Yang Cheng bowed to his teacher and said that he would take his advice into consideration. The scene changed the next day. Someone approached the gates of the estate. John opened them and was handed the package. He opened it, and what was inside amazed him. The master came and saw that he had received essence pills, dragon pills, and herbs. The Chao Gay Martial School had tried to compensate. Jan's mouth was watering and he was ready to use them all right now. But the master sternly threatened him not to eat them until he reached the 7th level of body tempering. He advised him to take Jian Wu Jiao and Ling Shi and the three of them go to the Chaogrish Mountains to train. Yen was delighted. After all, Lin Shi was also going with them. Suddenly, the teacher asked Jan for one thing. Gigi asked, "What is he talking about?" The master told him that he must protect Lin Shi no matter the situation. Cheng said that he shouldn't worry. Those demons on the mountain are nothing to him. He won't let them harm Ling Shi. And he went to the gate. At parting, the master wished them good luck. 10 days later, they were already in the mountains. Ling Sai walked behind and said that the guys were simply abnormal. They had reached the 7th and 8th levels of tempering in 10 days. Then Yan asked, hadn't she herself reached the 8th level? She said yes, that's right, but she spent a lot more time on it. But the main character started jumping around the fox and said that they would not let her be harmed, but would protect her. But she suddenly stepped forward and said that she did not need protection. Suddenly the guy noticed something, and he quickly ran forward. Ahead he found the flower of 3 lives and called everyone nearby to look at it. The sister came closer and was surprised. Where did the legendary flower of 3 lives come from? And Xiao didn't even know what kind of flower this was. She explained that according to legend, the Dragon Empress was not a human, but the daughter of heavenly demons. She died in an accident at the hands of an enemy from the race of gods. The Dragon Emperor managed to take revenge by killing the Divine Emperor. He received many wounds, but revenge did not return his beloved to him. Heartbroken, he used his power to collect all the flowers of the 3 lives and planted them in a secret place to bury the Empress. It was her favorite flower. Lin said that these flowers were later associated with beautiful, unwavering love and fidelity. Zhan came up behind them and said that it was fate. They should have made a vow of love to each other in front of these flowers. This made her very confused. Suddenly he pounced on her and threw her to the ground. Xiao didn't understand anything, but Jan quickly pulled him down. Lin Shi asked, "What is he doing?" He told her to be quiet because someone was walking nearby. The protagonists continued to watch from the bushes. They heard doubts about the presence of artifacts in such an inconspicuous place. The news seemed wrong. Li Junming and Wang Hongwei decided to check out the ruins without making any unnecessary complaints. The man categorically denied the existence of ancient ruins here. The guy told us to inspect the area ahead, and if we failed, to return immediately. The young man froze, noticing something unexpected. He noticed a flower. Is it Sanshenghua? The flower is considered an extremely rare find. The boy rejected the plant with disgust, calling it child's play. Jan saw that this guy had just destroyed the flower, and quickly grabbed Xiao's katana to stop the villain. The guy instantly ran out of the bushes and knocked away the bastard's sword. The stranger abruptly interrupted the guy's actions, demanding an explanation. They stood and looked at each other angrily, waiting for the next move. The embarrassed boy apologized, pointing to the Sanshenghua, the object of their wish. This confession did not impress the guy, and he asked, "So what?" The guy, smiling, demanded that the innocent flower be released immediately. The stranger replied sarcastically that he did not need permission to collect wild plants. The young man was outraged by his interlocutor's rudeness. After all, he had addressed him politely and kindly, and the stranger ridiculed the insolence of the provincials who dared to contradict the Golden Eagle. And a moment later he immediately attacked Jan, who barely managed to repel this attack. Why did he attack at all? And the guy chuckled, saying that Jan clearly had some fighting skills. Immediately, Jan knocked his sword away and promised to teach this boy to communicate well and politely. Immediately, Xiao and Lingxi came out from the bushes behind. The enraged guy vowed to destroy the offender here and now. Yan sarcastically praised the group's appearance before being threatened with violence, and gave the sword to Xiao, and then he rushed forward. One of the bastards warned the other to be careful, but it was too late. The guy's hand was already practically on the face of the flower offender. The palm gently closed his eyes, and then she slammed the idiot's head and back hard into the ground. That's why you have to watch your language. John stood on it with his foot and asked, "How does he like this kind of training?" The other guy rushed into battle furiously, shouting that he would kill the blue upstart. And then he started running from the corner and aimed his sword straight at John. But suddenly the tip of his sword hit another katana. It didn't work. It was Xiao who sharply warned everyone not to interfere with his brother's fight that had begun. The blonde golden eagle was surprised to see Xiao reach the 8th level of body tempering when I looked at his sword energy. The stranger expressed surprise at meeting such a strong young man in the wilderness. The guy dryly retorted that there are plenty of unexpected things in life. Meanwhile, Jan held the boy by the head and advised him to watch his speech in the future. Yang Chen finally let go of the poor guy and turned to face all of his friends. Then he called Xiao Kui and Ling Shi to leave immediately. The Golden Eagle representative suddenly shouted at them to wait. He was outraged by the group's intention to get away with it. They should answer to their family. Jan turned around with interest and asked, "What does the guy want from them then?" He demanded the boy's name, promising severe retribution for what he had done. Xiao and Yang looked at him with a smile and said that they understood everything. Zhao immediately dissolved into the air in energy, which really surprised the guy from the Golden Eagle family. And then a loud cry echoed through the forest, and even the birds flew away from the trees. Now there were two idiots lying on the ground, passed out. The girl looked at this matter calmly and insistently advised to leave the Chaogay Mountains immediately after the murder. The guy asked, "Is the Golden Eagle clan really that strong?" The girl confirmed their power, surpassing even the combat academy. And then Ian smiled, saying that now he had even more reasons to kill the two walking problems. Xiao was generally outraged by the destruction of the flower of love that Yang wanted to give her. This caused a sharp objection from the girl, who was embarrassed by the very fact of the flower of love. And yet she began to leave, insisting on an immediate departure from the danger zone. The guys immediately started running away from here. After all, the advice was quite smart. And so they all returned to their homes. Lindsay was the first to open the gate, and entering them, she saw something that greatly surprised her. There was a figure in a white cloak and hat standing in the yard. What a surprise. The guy was alarmed by the powerful aura that appeared so soon after the incident with the Golden Eagle. The unfamiliar old man turned around and announced his intention to take Ling Shi away. The master abruptly ordered the messenger to leave, stating that the time had not yet come. The old man insisted, pointing out that the deadline was approaching and wanting to evaluate the girl's progress. He acknowledged the outstanding talent of Ling Shi, who had reached the 7th level of body tempering. The master rudely threw out the guest, ordering him to return only on New Year's Eve. The old man agreed to wait a few days in the city of Chaogay. The boy was confused and asked about what was going on and the identity of the old man. He was worried about why he needed to take Ling Shi. The master decided that it was time to reveal the truth to the young man. He said that after the new year, Lin Shi would return to Duanmuho Manor to his mother. The teacher set a condition. If he liked her, the young man was obliged to become famous in the East within 5 years. He confessed that his martial soul had been destroyed, forcing him to hide in Chaogay. Master considered the 3 years he spent with Ling Shi to be enough. Yang Chen was shocked. How could the soul be destroyed? Who did this? The boy swore to take revenge for the destruction of his teacher's martial soul. The old man laughed, recognizing the young man's deep devotion despite his outward frivolity. The teacher declined the help, telling him to focus on training and his own growth of strength. But Yan still said that he would protect not only Lingxi, but also his master. The master expressed faith in the student, but warned him about the vastness and danger of the world. He noted the youth's current lack of strength, prompting him to make a resolute promise to become stronger, and Jan ran to fulfill his promise. While the master was leaving, oh, these kids. When he reached the chess table, he saw Lindsay there. The man reminded her of the eternal contract with San Shenghua, which guaranteed the girl's protection from others. The girl barely looked at him, calling him shameless. The young man handed over the dried San Shenghua as a pledge of their agreement for the time of separation. And then he quickly ran away, leaving the girl with an envelope. Holding him in her hands, the girl looked after him warmly. And then, embarrassed, she turned her gaze to the envelope itself. The old man persuaded the girl to accept the flower, hinting at a possible future meeting. The girl convinced her father that the boy's words were empty bravado. Her father objected, sensing the sincerity and seriousness of each of the young man's promises. The girl, in doubt, asked whether the guy had deceived his father himself. The father confidently stated that he had a good idea of the boy's character, inviting him to stay after they left. The daughter objected sharply, declaring her unwillingness to leave. She fervently assured her father of her safety and the impossibility of reneging on the agreement. The man recalled his mother's loneliness, blaming himself for his helplessness. The daughter called her father the strongest in her world, but he modestly pointed out the existence of better ones than her father. The conversation was interrupted by his unexpected question about her feelings. The girl was indignant because the young man was very rude, denying any feelings for him. The father gently caught his daughter in self-deception, noting Yang Chen's talent and rare spirit. The girl immediately became very embarrassed and threw the envelope away. Father immediately picked up the envelope. He wished his daughter to follow her heart, like her parent. The worry about his mother's loneliness and his own guilt resounded again. The daughter asked incredulously if the guy was really that good. The events moved to the city of Kyoge. That big golden bird is flying again, and all the same people are on it. The young man doubted the existence of the ruins, amazed by the modest size of Chaoge. Xiaoku identified the townspeople as members of the Golden Eagle clan. The group was alarmed. Were their enemies looking for them? The guy calmed his companion down, suggesting that they return home and watch. The scene changed. They were finally at Yang's house. Yang Chen and Xiao were happy. They were finally home. They walked forward, humming a cheerful melody under their breath. Suddenly, the door in front of them opened and a huge man flew out, pushing the main characters. It was the father who asked, "Why did those two bastards come back?" The sons mockingly asked about their father's blue nose after returning from the academy. The mother abruptly stopped Yang Zhengye from taking any further action. The father told his sons to go to their grandfather, putting the conversation aside. And he ran away from the angry mother. The brothers watched their father leave, and then someone's hand appeared from the passage. Ling Hui, Yang Chen's mother, emerged from the door, clenching her teeth tightly. She was very angry, and Yan tried to calm her down at least a little. She immediately calmed down and rejoiced at the return of her sons, and expressed deep concern for her other son. The sons asked if their father had made their mother angry again. What had he done? Mom replied sheepishly that everything was basically fine. Then she mentioned the rumor about Yan's expulsion. He asked if Yuan Ming was to blame for her son's problems. Yang Chen reassured his mother by informing her that the issue had been resolved. The mother's anxious question was cut off mid-sentence. She asked Xiao again if the situation had really been resolved. Xiaoqi confirmed the decision and the generous compensation to the academy. The younger sister happily welcomed her brother back. Yang Mengyu introduced herself as Yang Chen's younger cousin. The guy asked with a smile if his sister was bored. The girl asked for new books, but was sharply refused by the mother behind her. The girl almost burst into tears and began to ask, will her brother go with her? The young man gently declined, citing business, but promised a walk later. The sister admiringly called her brother the best. Yang Jin, the head of the family, appeared with a serious expression. The grandchildren greeted their grandfather in unison. The old man succinctly told Yang Chen to follow him, and they both entered the courtyard. Already sitting inside, the grandfather noted the progress of the young people at the academy. The grandfather warned his grandson about the dangers of arrogance, allowing only healthy ambitions. The old man predicted changes after the holidays, calling for diligence and perseverance. The young man vowed to remember his grandfather's instructions, addressing him with respect. A look of alarm flashed across the old man's face at the mention of the demon lord's heavenly art. Grandfather warned that the pain would increase as strength grew, forbidding immersion into the abyss. The strictest prohibition was issued. For 3 years, one cannot manifest the fighting soul even under threat of death. The boy confirmed his understanding of all the warnings by nodding to his grandfather. Some time passed and night fell. Everyone was sitting at the family table full of food. The woman looked sternly at her husband. Apparently the conflict was not resolved. That's why the father started eating faster so as not to communicate with his wife. The family celebrated Chen Er and Xiaoxiu's breakthrough to the 8th level of body tempering, and they all went crazy. A sudden knock on the door made the mother instruct her son to check on the guest, and Jan approached the door, where someone was ringing. And there, behind this door, stood Lindsay, dressed in luxurious and beautiful clothes. What a meeting! He was simply shocked when he saw her in front of him. Ling Shi playfully rebuked the boy, who seemed to not recognize her. The young man joked about her melancholy despite the short 3-day separation. The girl explained her spontaneous visit as a desire to see Kyoge before leaving. The guy offered to show us the festive city, noting the beauty of the New Year's lights. Lin Shi simply admitted that she hadn't eaten dinner yet. The young man immediately invited her to meet the family. She agreed, but asked him to be serious. And so they came up and opened the doors to the kitchen, where John's whole family was eating. Everyone was shocked when they saw the guy with the girl. The younger sister greeted the guest with admiration, calling her a beauty. And she patted her on the head, calling her a little beauty too. Yang Chen's mother cordially invited her son's friend to the table. Mom asked him to introduce the guest because he had never even talked about her before. And the son called her his older sister at school. Lin Shi politely greeted the boy's mother before they ate together. The father asked with a sly look whether the guest was really just a classmate. But his mother immediately reassured him, so hard that my father even shuddered. This made Lindsay laugh. The family invited Lin Shi to join them for a drink. Everyone greeted the guest loudly, calling her name cordially. The scene changed to a night view of the city, with lanterns being launched all around. And Yan and Lingxi were walking along some beautiful alley full of plants. Suddenly, the guy noticed something serious ahead, and he quickly rushed there, leaving the girl behind in confusion. The guy showed the girl an unfamiliar tree, asking what it looked like. Lingxi hesitantly guessed that it was the gufeng tree. The young man asked her if she knew the meaning of this plant. But Lindsay didn't know and asked him to explain it to her. He explained that the leaves and the core of gufeng are inseparable, and prayers under it heal the melancholy of being without love. The girl was touched by these words, and John immediately took her hands. Then he picked them up and took them tighter in his own, looking the girl in the eyes. And then he approached her, and the girl reciprocated. And finally their long-awaited kiss happened. They stood under the tree for a long time and kissed each other. Then, when they finished, the girl cringed and turned away. But Jan took her hands again and vowed to definitely find the girl in the future. The girl nodded in agreement and embarrassedly. In the moonlight under Gufeng, he proposed to perform an important ritual. Lingxi asked again what exactly the matter was about. The guy clarified, a secret wedding ceremony before heaven and earth. The girl flushed, calling him impudent, and turned away. The young man rushed after her, begging Lin Shi to wait. The night went on. The lanterns kept turning on and on. There was a bright light burning in some house. This was Guan's house, where the warrior poured tea into cups. Li Junjie directly asked Guan Minghao about the latest news from the Chaogi Mountains. He was a young master from the powerful Golden Eagle clan. Guan Minghao reported that his family had already sent experts deep into the danger zone. Li Junjie ordered the group to be reinforced, irritated as he recalled the lost festival. The subordinate assured him of the veracity of the omen, citing the authority of the academy master. The young gentleman received the report with skepticism, hoping for its accuracy. Then he looked out the window and saw something interesting. And from his window he saw Ian and Lindsay. That same fool Jan with that girl he really liked. Lee was amazed at the beauty of the girl in such a remote place, and was interested in her companions. He turned to Guan and asked who these strangers were. The guy looked out the window and asked why them again. He recognized Yang Chen, an expelled student from the academy. He explained that this guy was taken as a student by Qian Bo Guang, and that beauty next to the trash was his daughter Ling Shi. The stranger mocked the title of the Sword Saint, and then revealed Qian Bo Guang's exile in chaos. But he ended up realizing that Ling Shi was a very beautiful heiress of Duan Muho Manor. That meant she was special. Li Gunjie considered the meeting to be fateful and decided to get acquainted immediately. Suddenly, an old man from behind warned him about the girl's connections, but the young man insisted on a polite approach. He haughtily rejected the suspicions of base interests and jumped from the balcony. A moment later, Li was already behind the main characters. Li Junjie pretended to recognize Ling Shi and introduced himself with a smile. The girl coldly replied that they were strangers. He said they didn't know each other yet and gave his name, expecting instant recognition. Lin Shi said that she had never heard of such a thing. The guy started talking about how his family has very good relations with her estate and clan. Maybe he should invite her to talk on New Year's Eve? Lin Shi claimed not to know his family, despite trying to play on his connections. Ling Shi coldly refused the introduction and called Yang Chen to leave. Taking him by the hand, the girl and the guy decided to quickly leave this place. And for a very long time, they were followed by Li's angry and insane gaze. Jan walked along and was outraged by the stranger's pomposity, barely containing his rage. The girl told the boy to soberly assess Li Junjie's level. True martial realm. She added that even she herself avoids conflicts with the Golden Eagle clan. The guy asked again about his family, and immediately the face of this bastard popped into his head. He disdainfully rejected the youth's status, promising to protect Ling Shi at any cost. Then Yang turned to her and asked her not to call him Xiao Chenzi anymore. Only his mother called him that. The girl playfully asked if Xiao Chenzi's nickname didn't sound cute, and she was indignant because he also called her Little Fox without asking. And then she looked at him sweetly, and Ian immediately became embarrassed. But the atmosphere immediately turned sour when the guy tried to kiss the girl again. The young man grinned and offered a kiss as a sign of reconciliation. Lin Shi sharply rejected the impudent proposal, and they ran off to have more fun. Some time passed, and the scene changed to the winter gates of the estate. It was already time for Lindsay to go to her mother, and she had already climbed onto the golden bird with the old man. Turning back, she waved goodbye to everyone who saw her off with a smile. And then she flew away further, far, far away. It's very sad that Jan won't see her anytime soon. Her father immediately came closer from behind. The master joked that the daughter stole the soul of the student. I wonder if she will return. He asked with feigned severity about the events with his daughter the previous night. The guy mysteriously hinted at the irreversible, causing his girlfriend's father to laugh incredulously. The young man asked the teacher about the timing of the trip to Tianan. Tian Boguang was surprised by this proposal and idea, and the student muttered about returning to the roots. The master gently replied that it was too early for that, and then he left, leaving the main character alone with his thoughts. Yang Chen looked at the sky and vowed to catch up with Ling Shi in Tianan very soon. The scene changed. One day had passed since Lindsay's departure. The boy studied the manuscripts in the courtyard, while the master sat and drank tea on the table. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet began to shake, and Jan could barely stand while the master continued to sit calmly. The young man anxiously asked the teacher about the reasons for the sudden earthquake. The master warned gloomily of impending disaster. He shocked the student with the possibility of Chao Gei's complete destruction in the future. The teacher reminded him of the heavenly sign as a harbinger of the birth of the relic. The boy doubted that the treasure was capable of destroying the city. The master explained that the catastrophe would occur due to the forced opening of the seal. He condemned attempts to seize the treasure destined for him by force. Jan wondered, could the Golden Eagle family be behind all this? Suddenly, Xiaokui burst in and insisted on returning home immediately due to the disturbing events. The young man objected. His grandfather had foreseen this and ordered him to stay at the academy. The teacher confessed to a secret foray into the mountains, where he discovered a sealed relic. He warned about a monstrous beast guarding the treasure. This scared the main character. The master linked the earthquake with the awakening of the monster guardians, angered by the treasure hunters. The youth blamed the Golden Eagle clan, recalling their clash in the Chao Gei Mountains. The teacher was outraged by the disregard for the lives of civilians for greedy purposes. He called his disciples with him and told them to go into the city and see what these bastards wanted to do. The scene switched to the city at the same time. General Li Huashan directly blamed the guests from the Golden Eagle family for causing the disaster. Everyone sat at the table and simply drank tea with a smile, without responding to the accusations. The old man in the bandage falsely shifted the blame onto the lone monsters attacking the city. The general exposed the Guan family's complicity, calling them traitors. Grandfather rejected the threats, despite his opponent's control over the Blue Tiger army. Li Huashan thwarted the enemy's plans by spreading news of Emperor Yulong's treasure, and then he went away with his soldiers, leaving the old man very angry, who, in a panic, realized the catastrophic consequences of the information leak. He desperately asked Uncle Li Kungxing about what to do next. The old man with the gray beard first drank his tea and stopped to think, and then Li Kongxing predicted an influx of powerful clans and the attention of the royal family. He stood up and ordered the troops from Chaos to immediately storm the sanctuary. The boys were outraged by the cruelty of the plan, calling it paving the way to the treasure with human lives. Li Kongxing gave orders, the mayor to gather the fighters, the academy, all the students and teachers at the foot of the mountains. The scene changed, and we were back with MC, Xiao, Master, and Red Sister in the Chaogay Mountains. Xiao anxiously asked his elder sister about the situation on the front lines. The girl reported a continuous stream of monsters from the Chaos Mountains and a critical situation. Suddenly, a huge bear emerged from the forest and immediately crushed several army soldiers with its paw. And then he ran further straight towards John and his sister. A collision was inevitable, but the master quickly stopped the bear with his power before it could harm them. This was not the end. The portal continued to grow, and new animals flew out of it, snakes and bats. The young man asked the teacher about the inaction of the academy's experts at a turning point. The master assumed that the academy would be the first to fall when the defense was broken through. Dean Muyuan immediately appeared with an army of warriors behind him and a funny expression on his face. The defenders rejoiced at the sight of the academy's forces and the arriving mayor, believing in salvation. Hangu, the mayor of Chaogay, took a determined stance. Hope filled the fighters at the sight of reinforcements. Xiaoke chuckled. With so many good warriors, they would stop all the monsters in an instant. But the master darkly doubted the simplicity of the upcoming battle. The old man immediately soared into the air above his fighters so that everyone could hear. And then he called on everyone to storm the mountains to destroy the monsters. Yan immediately noticed the Golden Eagle agents, realizing the reason for his alarm. The general argued with the other warriors that they should hold the line and not retreat or attack. Hangu said that the only way to save oneself was to kill the demonic beasts. The general asked the old man, if he is the leader, then why is this bastard giving orders? But the old man didn't like this at all. He cursed loudly. Then he rushed forward straight towards the general at full speed, and he hit him hard in the chest with his hand. The blow sent the armored man crashing into the ground, leaving behind cracks in the ground. The guy lay on the ground and was in shock. He did not expect to meet someone from the kingdom of heavenly harmony. Jan was also shocked by such unexpected information. He watched the confrontation between his grandfather and the general, and thought that he could not believe in the existence of this kingdom. There were only 5 of them. For example, the hardening sphere of the tree is the most basic for ensuring physical strength. Then came the true martial realm, which consisted of cultivating qi and its further use. And at a sufficient level of the martial realm, the true qi is powerful enough and can be transformed for kung fu cultivation. Grandfather activated the aura, and the boy kept thinking about how the cultivators of the true martial realm were meeting in Tianan. However, those who are truly the coolest are the cultivators of heavenly harmony. At their level, one must awaken the fighting intent. Yang went on to talk about the pinnacle of the realm of heavenly harmony, the realm of immortality, which only the Emperor of the East had attained. Meanwhile, the grandfather was already shouting at the top of his lungs. He ordered everyone to go to the mountains and kill the demons. The saboteurs would be killed on the spot. The bald dean asked if he could lead the students and take them to the academy, while the 4 masters and instructors would accompany the old man to the mountains. The old man smiled at Ding Yuan and thanked him for his support, and then he turned to the general again, deciding what to do with him. The general stood and looked menacingly at the old fart he hated, but having calmed down, he said that half of the green tigers would go to the mountains, and the other half would remain in the city and protect it. The old man praised him. He said that he had made an excellent decision. The father turned to his daughter and said that she would be the one to lead the tigers in the city. The girl was very worried. The old man raised his hand with a grin and threateningly ordered everyone to attack and kill the monsters. Guan walked and looked with a grin at Yan, who was standing calmly with his master. The bastard then turned to Li and asked him to take Yang Chen with him to the mountains. Li didn't even understand who it was or what he looked like. And then, looking in their direction, he immediately remembered that New Year's Eve evening and grinned maliciously. But the master asked them not to involve his student and himself in their vile, dirty deeds. Li addressed the master politely. After all, the master probably wanted to send his student to the mountains, where he could gain experience. And here it was unclear what they would do with him. The master got angry and asked, "Is this bastard really threatening him?" But Yan asked the master to calm down, because it was really an important experience to be in a battle with monsters in the mountains. The master also thought about it. It was indeed a good experience, and it was impossible for the Golden Eagle clan to receive a wonderful treasure. And a second later the master agreed. After all, he wanted to see how the Golden Eagle's family would take the treasure. The scene switched, and the old man was again commanding the general. His army was the first to go up the mountain. This angered the general, because exposing the best fighters to death is very risky. And this heavy look confused the old man, and yet the general obeyed and moved forward, calling his men to follow him. And after them came the main character, the master and 2 bastards from the Golden Eagle. There inside, a huge demon boar was already raging, throwing people around. Many could no longer fight. The monster was too strong. But finally the boar fell dead, although there were a lot of dead soldiers left around. Jan looked at this and said that at this rate, they wouldn't have enough people to get to the treasure. The master said that this is to take into account weak people who go with the flow. Therefore, he should always work on his cultivation. After some time, night fell, and the whole detachment made a long halt in order to rest before tomorrow's slaughter. The general yelled at Li, saying that they had lost a lot of fighters and would not be able to take on everything in the next battles. Li immediately thought that leading them all to their deaths was a very bad idea, but he smiled, turned to Yang Chen, and an idea appeared in his head. Eli turned to the general again and said that tomorrow they would be the second echelon, and the first would be the allied forces of Yang Chen and the academy. Early in the morning of the next day, they were already moving forward, and as Yang Chen, the master, and other students of the academy said, were in front. Suddenly, Yang Chen noticed something and pointed forward. The teacher had to look at it. In front of them was a huge stone stele that shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow and sparkled in the sun. Li Gunje was overjoyed to discover the long-awaited treasure at the giant wall. He suggested that the wall concealed the legacy of Emperor Yulong. The youth dreamed of conquering heavenly harmony and the purple palace with the relic. He dreamed of immortal glory for the Golden Eagle clan, shaking the continents. While Yang Chen was looking at the treasure with admiration, the master noticed something terrible. Horror gripped him at the sight of the tracks of a living demon unicorn. Li Gunje confidently pointed out the wall to his uncle as the source of the treasure. Li Kungsing warned of the unpredictable dangers of forcibly activating the relic. The nephew agreed to find a test subject for reconnaissance near the wall. He chose Yang Chen after sarcastically noticing his serenity during the campaign, and he approached him with a proposal to check what was there at the bottom of the giant wall. The master covered his student and cautiously asked again about the essence of the assignment. Li Kungsing arrogantly threatened Qianbo Guang, reminding him of his status. The teacher asserted his right to decide the fate of the student by issuing a challenge. The opponent sarcastically reminded Qianbo Guang of his loss of former strength. It seemed that the two masters were about to collide in a fierce battle of auras, but the young man volunteered to go to the wall, calming the teacher. The master called him stupid, he can't go there, and Xiao Kui, in horror, rejected his presumptuous decision. Yang instructed Xiao Kui to deliver a final message to his grandfather, saying goodbye as a grandson in the next life. And then he winked at him in a conspiratorial manner. Xiao was shocked. He didn't understand what his brother meant now. The master shouted desperately, trying to stop Yang Chen. The young man reassured the teacher, asking him to trust his decision. And he jumped down, while the master mockingly asked what kind of dope had taken hold of the guy. They looked into the abyss, and as Yang Chen quickly descends into her, Li was glad that there was no danger after Yang landed. Suddenly, some kind of monster began to emerge from the earth and stone. It was a huge black and red dragon monster, very scary. Yang Chen was very afraid of this huge creature. The dragon immediately looked at everyone around him, all the people who had come to this mountain to find the treasure. His aura caused some weak warriors to immediately fall dead. The Keelan Guardian broke his sleep in rage, vowing to destroy everyone. Jan was simply shocked by this turn of events, and the monster immediately emitted a powerful beam of red energy straight at Yang Chen. And after that, he took out his long tongue and stuck it out towards the main character. One of the warriors screamed in horror as he saw the monster swallow Yang Chen alive. Xiao and Master were also shocked by this turn of events. Qianbo Guang demanded that the Golden Eagle clan return the disciple. The master tensed up, and then his true motives in his relationship with his student began to surface in his memory. He revealed the secret. Their meeting was not accidental, and the guy is a genius of the heavenly Tao. The teacher confessed to the deliberate choice of the student and the hopes placed in him. Despair overcame him at the thought of losing all hopes. Suddenly, the glow of the battle soul and the blades of the sword plan appeared. The old man nearby was in shock. He asked skeptically if the master was trying to commit suicide. And the master immediately opened his eyes, full of energy, and he sent his blow to the bastard Li, who persuaded Yan to go down there to the terrible monster. He tried to run away, but there was no escape from such a powerful attack from an energy sword. And as a result, the body of the bastard from the Golden Eagle family was pierced, and the old man managed to activate the shield and aura and protect himself from the blow of the energy blades. And in order to survive, he had to also activate the aura wave and throw all the blades away. The old man was in shock. After all, even after that serious injury, the master showed such a powerful force that it was impossible to resist. At this time, Xiao jumped down, and he turned his attention to some changes in the dragon's behavior. And suddenly, with his sensory abilities, he caught some part of the soul and aura. It was at this moment that Xiao realized that his brother Yang was still alive. At this time, Jan was standing near some waterfall. Gigi was shocked. What kind of place is this? Where did he end up? And then suddenly a voice addressed him. It called him baby and greeted him again. And the guy immediately remembered this voice. It was because of this voice that he agreed to come here, and now he was swallowed alive. Suddenly, his Spider-Man sense kicked in, and he turned towards the forest. It turned out it was just a bug. Ian was shocked. How did he sense it? Had his divine sense really developed that much? Suddenly, a spark appeared and turned to the little protagonist. They finally met. Is he happy with the meeting? Jan was horrified. They shouted towards the ball and asked, "Who is it?" And the creature interrupted him, saying that this was his sea of consciousness. Gigi was shocked and irritated. The sea of consciousness turned out to be too spacious. The golden ball told Jan that he should not be afraid, because the great devourer is not afraid of anyone. The guy heard this and didn't understand. What does devourer mean? The creature was confused. He shouldn't have spoken about the devourers ahead of time. He quickly corrected himself and asked how the Yang family was doing. The main character didn't understand. Who is this, and how does he know that he is from the Yang family? The ball told him to give it up. There were none left anyway. It asked, "Does the guy like swords?" Jan said uncertainly that yes, he liked them. And then the golden ball was delighted and said that it could give him some kind of gift. This surprised Jan even more. What kind of gift was this? Suddenly, they were transported to the real world, and a huge dragon woke up Ian, saying that he would need to pay tribute after success. And Jan finally woke up. He looked at the huge black and red dragon and was surprised that it had been communicating with him all this time. Then the guy turned around and saw the beaten master, and he ran towards them. Xiao cried out and tears came to his eyes. He finally met his brother. As soon as Jan ran up to the master, he asked, "Who did this to him?" The old man replied that everything was fine. After all, he wasn't even dead yet. The guy was angry. All this was done by the golden eagles. He turned to the elder beast and asked him to find and kill all these people with golden eagles on their clothes. And then this Godzilla took off into the air. Xiao and Master were shocked that he obeyed his order. The old man stood up and said that since the great beast had taken a liking to Yan, he had a chance to receive a wonderful inheritance. The guy said he would try to find out more about it. Half an hour later, Godzilla returned and landed with a thud. By telling Jan that he killed those people, they all really deserved to die. The boy was delighted and thanked the supreme divine beast. Meanwhile, the redhead was in shock from how some monster was killing his people. It's good that he changed his clothes and survived. And Yan turned to the elder and asked him to help him heal his master with his power. And the dragon said that saving a life is not difficult, but the soul is lost. To return it, you need a treasure that can embody it. The master smiled and asked to save only his life. That would be enough. At that very second, the dragon blinked his eye and a yellow beam flew out of his eye, and he aimed it straight at the surprised master's head. He fainted from exhaustion, and the dragon said that everything would be fine. He just needed to sleep. The guy immediately thought of asking about the wonderful legacy, and he asked the Supreme One, "Is there a great heritage in the stone wall?" Godzilla said that this was not a legacy, but a tomb that should not be desecrated by outsiders. The dragon apologized. "He could have sent you, but Ian is too weak. He can only wait for the gift and train here." And in an instant he disappeared right before the eyes of the main character. The unexpected behavior of the mythical creature puzzled the young man. The unicorn first tried to drive him away, and now promised a gift. But nothing happened. Brother exclaimed, amazed by the incredibly powerful spiritual energy of the place. He immediately realized the enormous potential for cultivation practice. The thought of the animal's preferences left the man slightly perplexed. Could their taste be bad? Suddenly something painfully popped into his head. The guy realized with amazement the fact of the second awakening. The sword-fighting spirit clearly appeared before him. The man wondered about the movement of divine consciousness. Did it penetrate inside the black sword spirit? Suddenly the swords around began to fill with energy, and all of this gave birth to a huge monster face made of aura right in the sky. Shingo loudly announced himself as the 999th bearer of the sword-eating spirit. He told of traveling through worlds and destroying many swordsmen. Only 33 bearers had the right to bury the sword. Due to the talent of the thrust, they absorbed 13 heavenly swords but only comprehended the 9th. The regret of what was not achieved was left to the future, the 10,000th generation of God's swordsmen. They were to master the 13 sky-devouring swords. The youth was surprised to read the name of the spirit, sword-devouring fighting spirit. The information shocked him. The boy knew about the 8th-place spirit among the 10 ancient supreme martial souls. It seemed incredible. The martial spirits were divided into levels: heavenly, earthly, innermost, yellow. There were also 10 supreme ancient souls, each of exceptional strength. The man tried to comprehend the recent message. It spoke of the 10,000th heir as a true master, a swordsman god, the terrifying power of the sword. Devouring spirit was burial. Worthy Taoist swordsmen were swallowed by the spirit and buried in the sword world. Since ancient times, countless masters have been buried in the sword world. Their characteristics have become available to the owner of the devouring spirit. The ability to use the buried souls of swords depended on the strength of the owner's divine consciousness. He had to extract them from the sword mound himself. Yang Chen eagerly decided to check what kind of sword spirit he would get, and suddenly the sword activated, and Yan's consciousness returned to the real world. He saw in his mind a sword with a drawing of that sword from the world of the buried, and then the guy was overcome with complete euphoria. The master looked at all this in shock. His student seemed to be drunk. The master asked the young man sharply what benefit he had received. The boy only smiled mysteriously in response. The fact that Jan said he wouldn't tell him spoiled the master's mood a little. The younger brother was sincerely happy for his teacher, expressing happiness. The master demanded an explanation. Yang Chen proudly stated that the reason was such an outstanding disciple, or rather, son-in-law. The younger brother quietly noted his older brother's increased shamelessness. Master categorically rejected any plans regarding Yang Chen and Lingxi. The boy begged the teacher to show kindness in the current situation. The teacher sarcastically asked the young man if he was even familiar with the concept of kindness. Yang Chen admitted his ignorance and asked the master to teach him. The master got tired of this and killed everyone, saying that he was extremely hungry. The master reassured everyone by calling the territory the domain of the Emperor of Sword Zhenwu. Then Yang ordered Xiao Kui to get food. And Xiao listened to the order, turned around and went hunting. About a month passed, and Jan sat by the stone and continued to train his new ability. The younger brother admired Yang Chen's achievement of almost reaching the peak of the true martial world. The teacher ate and exclaimed in his heart about the futility of success because the first movement of Ling Xiao Jianfa remained unmastered. The master expressed disappointment and regret for accepting such a student. The teacher indignantly asked about the deadlines and lack of progress. He flatly refused Lingxi. The master emphasized the highest level of Ling Xiao Jianfa, which belongs to the secret class. The teacher expressed doubts about the student's abilities in more complex arts. He decided to go for food. Xiao asked in surprise about the sudden hunger after the recent meal, and then turned back. All this time, Jan was meditating calmly, full of energy. After another half-month, Jan was still training, but had become much stronger. Both the master and Xiao noticed this as they stood nearby and watched the progress, and he immediately summoned a small dragon along with some small thing on its head. The great dragon immediately warned the young man about the danger of the place and ordered him to return to the world of people. The Sword Emperor presented his gift to the boy, expressing his hope that his present would be treated well. Yang Chen was shocked by the gift. He expected a powerful artifact, but received a puppy. Well, at least he can keep it as a pet. The master confirmed the puppy's ordinary bloodlines, predicting his weakness and inability to reach the true martial world. The puppy showed liveliness and intelligence, responding joyfully. The boy felt the hidden strength in the puppy, doubting the words about his weakness. The man decided to give a name to his new pet. The younger brother suggested the name Xiao Jingguang. The master put forward his own version, Guggen, linking the name with the owner and the puppy. The young man suggested the common name Wang Kai, popular with city ladies. Xiao rejected the previous options, suddenly settling on the name Hui. Xiao suggested a simple and suitable name, Xiao He, and so the young man officially named the puppy Xiao He, to which he responded. The master irritably agreed with the name, shaming the puppy's noisy behavior. And then the dog got a bump. A sudden rage seized the man. He wanted to kill the annoying puppy. The dragon looked at all this and thought that he would also like to hit John and kill him. The scene changed and all three main characters looked forward in surprise. The city was almost completely destroyed. The younger brother suggested going back home to check out the situation, and they quickly ran forward through the city. Seeing the family nameplate, they looked up. Jan was on his knees and couldn't believe his eyes. His house was destroyed. This caused him a horror which he could not contain and denied. Suddenly his uncle called out to him, standing with a mask of horror on his face. Young Chen ran over and asked Uncle Yu about the fate of his father and the rest of the family. Uncle Yu reported their long-ago departure, leaving behind grandfather's cryptic phrase about falling stars and a red sky. The boy repeated the message, expressing confusion about the location of the autumn mountains. The younger brother was relieved to learn of his family's safety. Uncle Yu invited Yang Chen over to sit down and discuss all of this. But the guy asked about Cheoji's news. Uncle Yu described the horrific events in the city with many casualties, mentioning Guanzi. It was revealed that Guanzi had allied with the Martial Academy to overthrow General Huashan. Guanzi seized power in Chaoge, turning the city into a possession of his family. Yang Chen realized that it was impossible to return back. After all, they were only waiting there to be killed. He decided to deal with the Guan family by calling Xiao Kui. The master asked them to stop and think about it all. The teacher warned of the risks. The warriors who saw the boy at the Great Wall would connect him with the legacy. The guy asked about the further route. Having received an offer from the master to go to Tianan, Yang Chen agreed with the plan, adding the goal of finding Lingxi. Master instructed Xiao Kui to scout out the presence of flying arrays in Tianan and buy 3 tickets if possible. Jian admitted that he had never flown, and the master noted the enormous distance to Tianan, which is impossible to overcome without a powerful horse. Xiao Kui announced the opening of a new station and the purchase of tickets for the overnight flight to Tianan City. The man reminded about the need to hide one's identity at night to avoid detection by Guanxi's people. Night fell, and the booth from which people were sent out was visible. The main characters approached, all wearing hats, masks, and even the dog was wearing one. The guide took out some kind of golden thing and lifted it into the air by force. She began to glow, and then it increased in size several times, and the light became even greater. Everyone watched as the conductor enthusiastically did his job. Yang Chen expressed the hope that he would one day master the art of creating such powerful arrays himself. And indeed, it was really huge. The protagonist was surprised by the master's depression before meeting with Lingxi, and the teacher warned about the difficulties of life in Tianan compared to Kyoge. He added to the difficulty of meeting Lindsay by raising the student's suspicions of family problems. The master exclaimed in his heart that he would like to kill the impudent student if he had his former strength. The boy asked the master to tell him about Tianan, admitting that he did not know the city. The teacher spoke ironically about Tianan as a wonderful place. He described a city with many aristocratic families, including ancient families and talented fighters. He compared the noble families to cruel wolves, ready to do anything for resources. The teacher stressed the importance of not only talent but also resources, urging students to fight for their chances. And the scene changed abruptly. They had already been on the road for 3 days. Jan looked out the window at the passing landscapes. And then the main character tried to wake up the master, announcing his arrival in Tianan. And again he leaned against the window and looked at what was below. And there is a beautiful landscape with beautiful courtyards and a huge palace with a lake. And finally they landed. The guy looked around the arriving city with surprise, confirming the destination. He immediately saw several huge, beautiful birds flying by, which surprised him. The master walked a little further and offered to show Yang Chen an important place in the city. The young man asked with interest about the location, having received only assurance to follow the guide. And after some time, they were already at a beautiful, majestic building. The man saw the Duan Mu sign and immediately connected it with Lingxi's place of residence. But the master said that this was nonsense. The student jokingly accused the master of having affairs with local girls and having children. The guy assessed the situation as not bad, but thought about the consequences of a sudden visit to Lindsay. The teacher warned about the impossibility of entry and the mortal danger of mentioning a relationship with a girl. The man decided to postpone the visit, confident of a future official invitation on a palanquin. Chen Boguang gave him a like, approving of this idea. And then he announced his intention to show the door, hinting at the student's independence in the future. After some time, they were already approaching the stairs. It was Lo's palace, with 2 guards standing outside. The guard at the gate politely inquired about the purpose of the group's visit. Uncle Yu introduced himself as Qian Boguang and asked to report his arrival. The guard agreed and asked them to wait here. Some time passed, and a man in beautiful clothes came out of the gate. It was Lu Yun who, on behalf of his father, respectfully greeted the swordmaster and invited them inside. The scene moved further inside the estate. Luo Yuhuan and Luo Minyuan introduced themselves at the meeting. Qian Boguang warmly welcomed Luo Minyuan back after a long separation. Senior Luo sat and drank tea in silence, and this ignoring threw the master off balance a little. He didn't expect this. The old man explained the true purpose of his visit, which was different from simple greetings. The owner of the estate directly questioned the formal nature of the guest's visit. Qian Boguang introduced Yang Chen and Xiao Kui as disciples, asking for temporary shelter. The old man explained the difficulty of his situation, noting the talent of the young men and their plans for the combat academy. Yang immediately turned his attention to the Luo woman, who objected. Luo Yuhuan expressed doubt about the student's ability to enter the prestigious academy. She openly stated that the orphanage would bring the wrath of the shadow killing master to the Luo family. Qian Boguang asked if Luo Mingyuan shared his sister's concerns, and the head of the family sat just as silently. Yang Chen firmly refused the humiliating request, calling for him to leave with dignity. Luo Mingyuan said goodbye to the old man politely but coldly. He instructed his servant Luo Yun to escort the guests. Luo Yuhuan gleefully predicted the end of the era of swordsman Qian Boguang. She scornfully noted the students' weakness, only at level 9 in body tempering, and ridiculed their ambitions to enter the academy. Some time passed, and the main characters were walking through the square. Jan suggested looking for a place to stay for the night, and he pushed Xiao. The guy agreed to Yan's offer to spend the night. Qian Boguang suddenly suggested going outside the city walls. The young man was surprised by the decision, recalling that he had money for a hotel. The old man remembered his abandoned garden at the foot of the lonely mountain. Yang Chen was outraged by the concealment of such a place during the humiliating requests. Some time passed and night fell. Outside the city, the man became wary, noticing signs of habitation in the garden. Xian Boguang instructed Xiao Kui to knock on the gate, but suddenly a little girl looked out of the gate, recognized her brother, and asked about the purpose of the visit. To find her aunt? The master immediately ordered John to approach the girl. A beautiful woman came out of the gate. She exclaimed bitterly that she thought Qian Boguang was dead. The master said with embarrassment that he could not die. The puzzled man reflected on the nature of their relationship and the woman's disappointment. The guy mentally condemned the master, suspecting him of unseemly actions. At that very second, the girl noticed something was wrong. The woman asked about the reason for the loss of strength, suggesting the intervention of the master of shadow killing. Xian Boguang explained the situation as an encounter with a terrible monster. Yu Luo sarcastically asked about the truth about the golden eagles and called the students freaks. Qian Boguang introduced the students as talented and was indignant at the insult. Yang was offended by the freaks and reminded Yu Luo of an old grievance. The old man justified himself by citing his weakness and suggested finding another. The woman began to get irritated by this. The brothers stood next to each other and were like, "Ooh." Yu Luo retorted that in Tianan no one but him would dare to teach her. Yang Chen mentally confirmed the opinion about Master's meanness. The woman became enraged at the request to be reasonable, accusing Qian of insanity. She gave him an ultimatum to keep quiet or go on business. Yu Luo threatened to break the old man's legs if he tried to leave. The scene changed to an inner courtyard, and all our heroes also went inside after the woman. The guys looked at all this because it was very beautiful. And indeed, the pebbles, the nature, the water, and the bridge, everything is very charming. Yu Luo instructed Jing Han to place the two youths in the back room, and they went to that same Jing. She surprised the two brothers. Jing Han briefly introduced herself and invited the boys to follow her. Their reaction was the same. How beautiful. She confirmed the possibility of overnight stays for guests at the estate. Yang Chen asked about Jing Han's relationship with the mistress, but she was very embarrassed, and then she ran away. The guy noted the servant's excessive shyness during the conversation. The next day arrived. Jan woke up with difficulty, stretched, and yawned, and only after leaving the house did he see the master. Young Chen brazenly suggested that the masters had a sleepless night, how he irritated his master very much. Yu Luo asked in surprise about the authenticity of the impudent man's apprenticeship. The students greeted the hostess politely in the morning. Yu Luo suddenly admitted that she liked Yang Chen. She suggested continuing the story, showing unusual interest. The guy defended the master, asserting his innocence in past events. Yang told about the master's habits, his love for Manhwa tea, and his nostalgic look when the brew was bad. This made the teacher very angry. Suddenly, Jan noticed the woman trembling. Her face was burning with hatred and anger. Jan had driven another person to it. Yu Luo asked skeptically about the authenticity of the feelings and the absence of a mistake in the addressee. The guy tried to explain his good intentions to the master, but the situation turned into an embarrassment. Xian Boguang asked in a rage if his disciple really wanted him dead. Yang Chen offered to apologize to the master personally, assuring him of a quick reconciliation. The old man, in anger, swore to beat up the impudent student. Thus, Yang Chen and Xiao Kui settled in the Garden of the Humble Sword upon arriving in Tianan. 1 month later, the boy was still training in the yard, and he learned to actively and correctly imbue the sword with his fighting spirit. And the sword was very sharp, as if it had just been made by the best blacksmith. The development of the 13 forms of heavenly devouring art, from the inheritance of the devouring spirit sword, has begun. The first form of the first sword had exhausted the man's true energy to an incredible degree. Zhao Kui inquired about his brother's progress after training. Yang Chen admitted that it was impossible to master the sky-devouring sword art at his current level. Yang Chen inquired about the disappearance of the girl who had met them a month ago. Xiao explained that Jing Han was her niece, a student at the academy who came once a month. He praised the guy for paying attention to detail during the conversation, and Xiao said that the aunt was already here. She walked across the yard, holding a demonic dog in her arms. Qian Boguang affectionately called out to Xiao Hei's returning pet. He asked the dog about the results of the reconnaissance in the city. The aunt reported the impossibility of the young men's admission without the personal intervention of the head of the academy. She suggested waiting for the seasonal exams as a more realistic chance, but the girl hinted at a simple solution through the patronage of Master or Uncle Yu. Qian Boguang refused the humiliating request, citing shame in front of them. The guy asked about the point of moving from the garden to the academy when there was space for training. The girl sharply reprimanded the young man for comparing the provincial and main academies. She stressed that the academy is the only path of development for students. The master named 3 reasons for the need to enroll. The first is the connection to the Kyoge heritage. Sooner or later, the Golden Eagles will find out that the guy is alive and will come for him. The academy, as a shrine to martial arts, will provide protection beyond the humble garden. The second reason is the best resources for growth. All the strong fighters in Tianan are graduates of the academy. She said that enrollment is the fastest way for students to grow in strength. The third reason was Qian Lingxi, the academy's key disciple. Master compared Yang Chen's crush to his own youthful passion for Lingxi's mother. Ian asked again about Lingxi's presence at the academy. He immediately announced his decision to enroll. The girl called the guy hopeless. The master reported on Jing Han's assistance in visiting the academy. Some time passed. The girl approached the estate. The guy immediately met her at the door and asked about Jing Han's return at the end of the month. Yu Lo conveyed that they would visit the academy with Jing Han tomorrow morning, warning her about her behavior. The young man sincerely thanked the hostess for her help. She asked permission to ask an important question. The girl asked about the master's loss of strength. The guy assumed that she was hiding the truth because of her hot temper. He admitted his guilt, telling about his encounter with a monster in the Kyogi Mountains. The master sacrificed his fighting spirit to save them, confirming the story. The boy asked about possible treatment after learning about the need for spiritual treasure. Yu Lo noted the incredible rarity of such artifacts even in the royal vaults. The boy vowed to find the treasure to restore the master. The next day arrived. The young men walked with the guide through the yard. Yang Chen asked Jing Han to tell him about the academy. She asked if they wanted to hear specifically about Qian Lingxi. The guy confirmed his interest in all information about the institution. Jing Han described Lingxi as the famous key disciple of the Eastern Court. Jing Han added that Qian Lingxi's beauty has made her a cult figure with an army of fans. Yang Chen quipped about the typical beast, assessing the girl's influence. Xiao Qi asked about his brother's jealousy, but the boy confidently declared their secret engagement. The young man clarified the meaning of the term Eastern Court in the structure of the academy. Jing Han explained the division into 4 courtyards, singling out the eastern one as the strongest. Yang Chen remembered the Eastern Court's priority for admission. Jing Han pointed towards the approaching academy building. It really surprised the guys. The building was very majestic and beautiful. The boy acknowledged the incomparable superiority of the main academy over the provincial one. Jing Han offered to accompany the boys inside the territory. Xiao Qi asked about his brother's sudden stop. Yang Chen noticed a group of students and pointed at them. "These are the bastards who didn't help them." Lu Yun was asked about his acquaintance with this mama's boy. He dismissed the guy as some backwater town trash. Zhouke noted his brother's growing anger with alarm. Yang Chen asked Jing Han about the consequences of a possible fight, and the woman became very worried. Yang Chen asked Jing Han about the possible consequences of fighting with an academy student. She explained that the management not only does not prohibit, but also encourages duels. Jing Han added an important condition: the obligatory consent of both parties to the fight. She strongly advised against fighting before being officially enrolled. The boy approved of the academy's liberal rules. Yang Chen loudly challenged Luo Yun to a fight, humiliatingly comparing him to a dog. Luo Yun was outraged by the impudence of the challenge. He recalled the boy's recent humiliating visit to Luo's house. His ugly sister insulted Yang Chen's lineage by declaring the superiority of his family's servants. The guy barely restrained himself from hitting the girl accompanying Luo Yun. The girl threatened to kill for insults. Yang Chen ordered Xiaokui to straighten her crooked mouth. The guy pointed at his brother, a third-level master of the true martial world. Luo Yuhuan offered to help eliminate Yang Chen. The guy defiantly suggested that they all attack together, and the guy and the conductor stood and looked at Xiao's aura. Jing Han was surprised by the sudden change in the boy's behavior after leaving the garden. She noted the strength of the opponents and suggested not to get involved, but Yang Chen ordered an attack. Luo Yun emphasized that killing in duels was prohibited by the academy's regulations, but these villagers were not students, so they could be eliminated. Xiao accused his opponents of whining during the fight, and the idiot opponent immediately activated Ice Fist. The guy assessed the presence of the Heavenly Path Masters as an indicator of the Academy's hidden power, and the enemy pounced on Xiao, saying that he would kill him with one blow. But the blonde stood without moving, and he proudly took the blow straight to the face without making a sound, standing still. The guy was shocked, because his blow didn't even penetrate Xiao's clothes. The observer did not understand how he withstood the Ice Fist's blow without being damaged, and then he turned to Xiao with horror, who was already raising his fist to strike. And he hit him right in the face with all his might, so much so that my teeth fell out immediately. Yang reproached Xiaokui for the crooked editing of the girl's mouth. Xiao apologized, offering to repeat the blow, but I think the upstart had enough. Lo was very angry about this action. The viewer noted the attractiveness of the stranger, Yang Chen. Luo Yun was angered by his opponent's invulnerability to Ice True Qi. He got angry and told Xiao that he had managed to push him to the edge and activated his aura. So much so that everything around was in an aura of fire. Yang shockedly announced that his opponent was at level 4 of the true martial world. Shou guessed that there was a second master of the heavenly path. The Luo family's innate fire martial spirit manifested, signaling Luo Yun's fury. Spectators predicted the inevitable death of the young men, but others admitted that Yang Chen had hidden trump cards in defeating Meng He with one blow. Xiao made a gesture with his finger and said that up until now, none of them could defeat him. Everyone was shocked. Is Xiao an idiot? Luo Yun was furious and took the challenge as a mortal insult. And so he immediately activated his aura and the fire on his hands. And then he launched his energy attack straight at Xiao. Everyone said that he was ranked in the top 50 in the southern courtyard, and his fire palm had reached minor mastery. This technique was ideal for fire Taoists, promising failure to the enemy. But Xiao was no slouch either. He activated his fighting spirit. Yixiao stood in a stance, preparing to repel this fiery attack. The spectators decided that a simple fist would not stand against the power of the fire palm. One of them urgently warned Xiao about the danger and demanded that he move away. But the blonde calmly rushed towards the attack and blocked it with his hand. The same viewer was shocked. The spectators continued to stare at the haze after the blow and thought that Xiao must be crazy. And when the smoke cleared, Xiao was visible, standing there with only a slightly burnt fist. Luo Yun couldn't believe that his opponent had broken his palm with pure physical force. Yang knew that Xiaokui possessed the heavenly demon body from the true martial world. His strength was unfathomable, and at that moment, Xiao rushed forward towards the fire bastard and decided to hit him. Now he was no longer very brave, especially when Xiao grabbed his hand. Something interesting was about to happen. Then he threw it back, taking a very strong swing. And he hit Lo with such force on the ground that even the flash came from the speed and force of the blow. Lo lay on the ground after such a blow and did not understand what was happening. At this moment, Xiao stepped on his chest with his foot and pressed hard. Xiao hit him and advised Luo Yun to talk less and train more. He repeated the advice, emphasizing the uselessness of words without practice. Everyone around was shocked. The girl screamed in horror, demanding that her brother be released. But Xiao turned angrily towards her, and he hit her in the ugly and disgusting face too. But it wasn't such a strong blow. The girl didn't even fall. She just stood there. But the woman immediately looked in the mirror at her ruined face, and she fell to the ground, crying and opening her mouth with bad teeth. Xiaokui approached Yang with the girl and expressed outrage at the meanness of his opponents during the fight. Yang Chen wondered why Jian was hitting their faces instead of fixing their mouths. One of the spectators called the duelists shameless, and Jian started shouting after them and advised them to call their elders because they were useless. The beaten people gathered and were horrified and angry at how they had been treated. Jing Han suggested leaving the place immediately after the incident. The guy refused to leave until he found the beast, Lindsay. John explained that the charter encourages duels between equals in strength, but makes no exceptions for outsiders. The girl asked, did they learn this from each other? Xiao admitted to accidentally using excessive force during the conflict. Although the academy did not interfere, Luo Yun remained an elite disciple of the Southern Court. Jing Han warned of revenge from the strongest disciples and possible interference from key students. The boy ignored the threats, inquiring about the level of the key students and mentioning Lingxi's status. She emphasized their superiority over Luo Yun, true martial world level 9 or higher. Jian was very surprised, and then he acknowledged an unexpectedly high level of strength among his peers at the academy. The young men refused to return, citing orders to visit the academy. The guy confirmed his intention to find Lindsay at any cost. Jing Han objected. Access to the restricted area of the eastern courtyard. Only key students had the right to enter. The guy insisted on trying to get in there despite the prohibitions. Jing Han rushed to catch up with them at the entrance of the academy. The scene changed. Now they were already at a beautiful palace. Yang, Xiao, and Jing approached this estate. The girl noted Luo Yun's status as an elite disciple of the Southern Court. And indeed, those same beaten aristocrats stood before them. He reached the 6th level of the true martial world. Xiao Qi asked about the possibility of retreat. Yijing asked again in surprise, what did he just say? John approached him and suggested that they warm up. And the aristocrat's companion clarified the details of Luo Yun's defeat by this child. Luo Yun said not to ask nonsense and offered a double reward for help in dealing with the offenders. This award inspired the guy, and he immediately activated his fighting spirit. Then he began to walk and stretched out his hand, concentrating energy in it. And then he sent it forward straight at the guy like a laser. Xiao immediately took out the sword from behind his back, and the attack landed right on his blade, pushing Xiao back a little. But he continued to stand without a single scratch on himself. The enemy assessed the guy's strength and decided to try a stronger attack, and he gave her some kind of powerful blast, consisting of 3 laser beams. Immediately, Yang flew forward to Xiao and grabbed his sword, and immediately he fired a powerful volley of fire forward, and Jan's energy easily defeated the enemy's powerful laser. The aristocrats near that guy started running away in fear after seeing Yan's attack, but the warrior did not retreat, but looked at it with concentration, and then he activated a huge laser shield, which helped him repel Jan's attack. Inside the shield, all the aristocrats were blown away by the force of the shockwave, but the warrior stood there and was in shock. This Yan was somehow very strong. The observers stood at the fence and inquired about the reason for the noise at the academy gates. The boy turned to Sister Han and briefly described the incident, asking her to convey her regards to Lingxi. He disdainfully assessed the level of the southern courtyard and summoned the key disciples. The man contemptuously called his opponents weak and loudly introduced himself as Yang Chen. He demanded that she remember his name, and he and Xiao quickly ran away, leaving Sister Han alone. Luo Yun vowed to take revenge on Yang Chen in the future. At this time, the scene moved to another estate. A new person has appeared. Star Witch Yue Xiaoxin, in a very interesting outfit. She entered the room, opening the large red door. The girl gasped and expressed concern about Lingxi's overzealous training, and she was really training hard at that time, and sweat was dripping from her face. Yue Xiaoxin asked about the organizer of the next tea party. The girl refused to participate in such events. A friend acknowledged her dislike of social events. She happily reported receiving the Manu technique, a mid-ranking secret class art. A friend congratulated me on my success, noting the master's increased status. The girl told a funny story about the daytime humiliation of the Southern Court. A friend clarified the details of the elite students' shameful defeat by the visiting students. It became known that the level of foreign youths was low, only 3rd layer of the true martial world. A friend suggested that geniuses originated from influential external forces. The girl connected them with visitors from other areas who challenged the key students. She was skeptical about the chances of weak fighters against the highest levels of the true martial world. Lindsay laughed at this. Suddenly, the girl revealed the name of the main instigator, Yang Chen. Chen Lingxi immediately reacted to hearing the name. Yue Xiaoxin asked Lingxi about her acquaintance with Yang Chen. The girl immediately became embarrassed, and she realized that the guy came here specifically for her. And then she asked if only 2 guests had arrived or if there was someone else with them. She mentioned that Yang Chen was accompanied by a student, Jing Han. Lingxi suddenly got ready to leave, surprising her friend. Yue Xiaoxin guessed that Lingxi had suddenly fallen in love with someone. The scene switched to Jing's office, where she was sleeping. Suddenly, she heard a knock on the door and realized with horror they had come again. She opened the doors and saw 2 people in front of her. It was 2 female students who asked Jing Han about the boy's origins. Jing Han admitted in confusion that she didn't know them. The girl was surprised by her ignorance about her companions. Jing Han immediately sank down, fed up with the questions. And then one of the students suggested stopping the questions and leaving. The students discussed Jing Han's ability to attract talent. Jing closed the door and exhaled. But there was a knock on the door again immediately. Jing Han once again repeated her ignorance of the guest's origins. And then I realized that there was someone interesting standing behind the door. It was Lingxi, who looked questioningly at the irritated and tired girl in front of her. Jiang immediately realized who was in front of her and began to worry. Lingxi introduced herself and immediately asked, "Where is Yang Chen and everyone else?" She immediately replied that they were all currently in the Garden of Swords. And turning around, Lingxi quickly thanked the girl for the information. But Jing started shouting, calling the girl to her. She wanted to go to the garden with Lingxi, and the scene moved straight into this garden. The girl in red turned around to face the entrance and saw two girls in it. Jin immediately walked over and spoke to her aunt. And then she stood, embarrassed, waiting for an answer from the woman in red. But she immediately turned to Lingxi, saying that she looked just like her mother. No wonder such a boy had a crush on her. Lingxi immediately greeted him shyly, thinking that here in front of her was her mother's rival in love. But the woman said that it was time for the girl to go and meet her father. And they quickly ran further into that part of the garden where the master was sitting. Lingxi pounced on her father with a hug and asked if his cultivation was okay. The father said that God loved his beautiful face, so he imposed very few sanctions on him. The girl immediately burst into tears, saying that now was not the time for jokes. Then she stopped and saw Yang Chen hiding behind a tree. She ran up to him and grabbed him by the ears, asking how he took care of his father. So he brought him here to Tianan? And still smiling. Ian asked to let him go and he would explain everything, and Lingxi said that he could only give his explanation to her ass. The father just sat there, chuckling, and begged his daughter not to be so cruel to Yang Chen. And the girl finally let go of the poor protagonist's ear. Then Yang Chen smiled and told Lingxi that she had nothing to worry about. He would cure her father. The girl got even more angry and asked what kind of nonsense he was talking about. And suddenly, a moment later, an old man in a hat appeared in the garden. He turned to the girl and said that she should not be here. She should return to the academy. The girl immediately turned to the old man and asked what right he had to control her. The hat said that it was his duty to guard her secretly, so he should not take her out into the city. It was almost impossible to maintain secrecy there. Then he turned to her father and asked if he wanted to show disrespect by coming to this city. Did he want to die? This made the master very angry. He immediately stood up and said that now that he had lost his cultivation base, the old man really thought that he was afraid of death. The old man immediately activated fire magic and his entire body was covered in flames. He then turned to Duan Mukui and told her to get out of the sword garden immediately. Immediately, a sister in red stood in front of the master with a dagger in her hands. Now fire magic was circling around everyone. The master looked at all this with disdain, and the old warrior said that he did not expect him to lose his strength. But even so, it would be better for him not to appear in the city and stop communicating with Miss. Then he turned to the Miss in Blue and asked her to return to the battle house. The old man said that she had already attracted too much attention. She should go back and not come back here if she did not want to bring trouble to the sword garden. The master told his daughter to return to the fighting house and gave her advice. The only way to control her destiny is to become strong. Yang threw up his hands and told Lingxi not to let hatred cloud their hearts and pride. They still had time. She turned and reluctantly agreed to this. And then she left the yard together with the old magician. Jan watched them for a long time. He remembered how another old man had told him about people who were suffering and who felt powerless and could not overcome all the obstacles. It seemed like a dead end. The elder looked ahead and said that 99% of people in such a situation are full of hatred and are trying to increase their strength in order to break down barriers. He turned around and said, "They forget that individual power can be limited." What would Jan do in this situation? The question caught him off guard. But then the wise old man put his hand on the main character's head, and he said that he wanted to give advice on how not only military force but also other forces can solve many problems. This is wisdom. He had told him to think twice before acting. Now he remembered those words especially clearly. His gaze changed. It was directed forward and it was filled with confidence. Everyone stared at him, and the master grinned and asked what was wrong with him. Was he upset? Jan shook his head. The master realized that Jan was not as stupid as he thought. He approached him and said that he needed to become stronger and express his dissatisfaction, because if he was strong enough, he could defeat any demon or monster. How suddenly Yan sat down at the table and just started drinking tea. The master was shocked. How was the main character calm and not angry? He turned to Aunt Jing and asked about the situation in Tianan City and its main forces. Useful information in his case. The girl smiled and said that she would arrange everything without any problems. The master was still surprised by this guy. Yang imagined Tianan as a chessboard, as the master had taught, and asked, would he be able to conquer the world with such forces? He moved his piece and said that if they fought openly, he would either remain a pawn or would simply be captured. The master was shocked by the changes in Yan and his thoughts. Gigi calmly stood up and announced that he was going to continue training. The adults looked after him and thought they were not mistaken about this boy. The next morning arrived. Jan approached the girl in red, who handed him a book with detailed information about all the forces in the south, and told him to study everything carefully. The boy thanked her, and she turned around and wished him luck in mastering the material. As soon as he left the door, Jan began to read it. It spoke of the three most powerful forces in the south. This is the fighting house, the house of Duanmu and the house of shadow killing. The guy decided that it was just a miracle. Probably his master was alive and well. He remembered another clan of golden eagles, who are a lever of pressure in this region. The guy sighed and realized that this game would not be easy to play, and then he began to eat. The master asked, he doesn't intend to take part in this chess showdown, does he? Jan reassured him that he would patiently watch from the sidelines. There was no reason to worry, and the master continued eating, calling John very stubborn. A Xiao and the girl in red stared at them. The girl said that her uncle's little daughter was in danger. She had recently been poisoned by a flower from the underworld. The master was shocked and horrified when he heard about the poisoned flower. Master thought that Uncle Sha really had a woman, presumably the same age as Yu Lingxi. The Minghua poison turned out to be a heavenly poison. Even in Tianan, there is no antidote. The question arose about the origin of the legendary Minghua poison in the secret world of Tianan. Xiao immediately asked what the secret worlds were. Aunt explained that the secret worlds were magical rifts in space. Their sizes varied. Most were small, empty, devoid of treasure and life. However, some hid rare treasures, relics of the powerful, or even their legacy. Master said that the entrance to the Tianan secret world was in the Tianan Academy. Controlling the gate made the academy the strongest force in Wunang. He said that only the discipline of martial arts can help him enter and learn. Yan thought that this was a great chance to break the game. He would become a player in Tianyang. For others, Minghua meant certain death. But the young man had the ancient demon dragon and martial arts. Yang whispered to the master that old man Shi Quanzu was in trouble. The master thought it inappropriate to visit him. The mentor asked if the boy expected him to humiliate himself by begging for a place for him. The boy pointed out the awkward moment and the uncle's madness. Yang told the master that he wanted to enter the academy. It didn't require his attention. He could test Minghua's poison, assuming that it could be neutralized. The mentor sharply asked if the boy was really capable of neutralizing the deadly poison. The young man explained the peculiarity of his fighting spirit. The mentor asked again about the fighting spirit, wanting to know its nature. Xiao intervened, declaring his brother's superior fighting spirit. The master was already tired of all this, especially of these two. Yan acknowledged the presence of a dual martial spirit, the spirit of the snake sword, and the main one, the first in the world of martial arts spirit. The mentor wasn't interested in titles. He needed an answer. Could the young man resist poison? The guy confidently stated that the success rate was 70%. With 70% certainty, the master suggested trying to solve the problem immediately. The scene changed again to the estate. The main characters walked forward through many columns. The guards announced a rule. Only the main students of the Northern Academy were allowed into its central area, but the master handed them his key with the hieroglyph. The guards were immediately taken aback when they saw the pass badge, and they let him go ahead without any problem. They walked further, closer and closer to the main building of the estate, and as they approached the gate, they heard someone recognizing the famous Qian Bo Chang, surprised by his visit. Boguan asked Uncle Shai for help against Minghua's poison. The uncle opened the door slightly and ordered them to come in. As soon as they crossed the threshold, they stood on the floor, which was completely covered with fragments, and they saw in front of them a rather large man and a bunch of servants around him. It was the head of the Northern Academy, Kujen Ye. Uncle Shi asked in shock about the reason for Boguan's destruction of the foundation of power. Boguan told about a fight with a mountain monster that cost him his spiritual energy. The chief was shocked and did not answer. The mentor introduced a new student whose special fighting spirit could save the girl. A question was asked about whether the guy had a spirit that could cleanse poisons. Uncle Shi demanded that the young man immediately display the essence of his fighting spirit. Xiao immediately began to proudly talk about the world superiority of her brother's martial arts. But Jan quickly covered his boastful mouth with his hand and asked him to be silent. Yang Chen explained the nature of his devouring spirit, which was able to absorb Minghua's poison, and then he demonstrated it. The room was filled with blue fighting spirit. The ground beneath his feet began to crack with energy. His spirit is so great that it immediately plunged the entire room into darkness and filled it with energy from within. And then he spread his arms and let in another energy. Now everything was red, and his fighting spirit took the form of a huge black and red dragon. Despite the vagueness of the spirit's appearance, the boy felt its overwhelming power and uniqueness. Uncle Shi said he wanted to try. The master reproached the young man for concealing such important information about himself. Even the Supreme Spirit could not guarantee a cure for Minghua. All that was left was to hope for a miracle. Uncle Sha stood up and told the young man to follow him. They went into the room where the poisoned girl lay on some kind of stone that looked like ice. Uncle said that the poison was only partially expelled from Lin Pai's body, temporarily sealing it on his forehead. John immediately came closer and asked to let him try to do something. And then he immediately activated his fighting spirit, who launched his energy tentacles straight towards the sick girl. Then the energy moved closer to Printing, and she began to enter her directly. The seal suddenly began to deteriorate, requiring immediate intervention. The master urged those present to remain calm and observe carefully. And then Uncle was still very surprised by what he saw. The evil power of the poison began to be sucked out of the girl's seal, and she herself began to levitate in the energy. John was in shock. It was difficult to contain such an evil force. And then the last traces of poison came out of her seal, and the girl screamed. And then she fell asleep, because the seal had completely disappeared along with the poison. Her father almost cried because it actually worked. Now his daughter was unconscious, but alive and well, and near Yang Chen only a light haze remained. Uncle Sha immediately rushed forward to his daughter Ling and called out to her. He came closer and couldn't believe his eyes that the girl was okay. Uncle Shi acknowledged his great debt to the master for saving Lin Pai. The mentor redirected his gratitude to Yang Chen, emphasizing his merits. Qian Bogong invited everyone to a rare tencel tea as a token of his gratitude. The master wished Uncle Shi and Lin Pai a happy future after what they had gone through. Xiao asked about his brother's condition. He replied that he just needed rest. But in his mind he noted the rarity of the devouring spirit, capable of absorbing ancient poisons. Qian Bogong explained the value of tencel tea in restoring strength and strengthening the body. And now everyone was already outside and waiting for tea. Uncle Shai immediately came over with a tray with a teapot and cups. It was time to drink tea. The first to start drinking tea was Yang Chen, who worked harder than anyone else. After one sip, he enthusiastically urged his brother to drink more, which caused slight displeasure on the part of the master since the young man had no manners. Shai expressed his gratitude for the honor of being accepted as the master's disciple and gave them even more rare tea. Qian Bogong explained the traditional approach to treatment as the only possible one in their situation. 3 years ago, Heavenly Master Guoshi predicted a great future for Lin Pi, which justified his current efforts. There was surprise about the existence of the Heavenly Tao Master as the owner of a unique fighting spirit. The world turned out to be full of the incredible. Qian Bogong said so, and Uncle Shai immediately guessed his desire to send the young men to the academy. The mentor sat and smiled calmly. The suggestion to send the boys to his North Campus came after the mention of the mentor's retirement. The master dedicated himself to the sword, but a year ago he took on a student, Duanmu Menghua's daughter, Yu Lingxi. The master thanked him. Yang Chen asked his master about the possibility of studying at the East Campus. The answer was a resounding negative. The guy was told that his transfer was unacceptable due to the complicated relations between the academy's combat houses. Jan agreed with displeasure. Uncle Sha immediately looked at Xiao and asked if he had ever done gymnastics. And then came an unexpected offer for Yang Chen to become his disciple. Jan and the master were in shock. Xiao did the same, but he didn't show it and remained silent. And Uncle just screamed, "Okay!" Everyone was surprised. Apparently, everything was decided without the participation of Xiao himself. Yang asked whether accepting the apprenticeship meant automatically recognizing Qian Bogong as a master. Qian Bogong emphasized that hard training was more important than the formalities of the academy. The guy jokingly called his master cheap, causing him to react instantly. Having quickly recovered, she declared that his master was much more handsome. Uncle Shai informed Yang Chen about access to the closed area for practice, subject to the rules. The guy asked skeptically if this condition was specifically aimed against him, but the master interrupted him in time. 3 days later, Yang Chen and Xiao Kui were discharged from the academy's infirmary. The students discussed Yang Chen, doubting his victory over the elite of the South Campus. He walked like a fool across the square, whistling a song under his breath. Others noted that the guy's appearance fully matched the rumors about his attractiveness. Yang Chen asked the North Campus students about the location of the training hall. The girls in front of him started giggling, and then they explained to him that all 4 campuses shared a common combat arena. The students offered to accompany Yang Chen, to which he politely agreed. And here he was already on the spot. The girls saw him off after all, and he waved goodbye to them. There he saw Xiao. Yang asked if Elder Q had taught him martial arts before. Xiao confirmed the training of the powerful Panlong style, which is mandatory for mastering. He warned that without success in this style, returning home will be impossible. Yang inquired about the level of the Panlong fighting style that Xiao had studied, but the blonde got upset and said that he didn't know at all. Suddenly Jan noticed something. These were people in beautiful clothes, aristocrats again. Li Hyun blocked the way, advising the boy to be patient before new trials. Yang made a sarcastic remark about Li Hyun's healed wounds, asking about any new claims against his brother. Li Heng started to get angry, and then his sister threatened that the South Campus representatives were not finished with Yang Chen yet. The guy mockingly suggested repeating the previous defeat if the enemies gathered in a crowd again. The girl immediately predicted that Yang Chen would soon repent of his insolence in the face of new threats. And those bastards left in anger again, leaving Yan and Xiao alone. Jan called his opponents cowards and took his brother away to continue training. He turned around and immediately a man came up to him and asked, "Is his name Yang Chen?" The guy asked, "Did something happen?" Here, the stranger presented Yang Chen with a challenge to fight, testing his reputation. The guy opened the envelope and looked through it completely, and he coldly refused to waste time on meaningless fights. He tore the letter right before the stranger's eyes, and then he started to leave. 10 days later, rumors of Yang Chen's cowardice began to spread throughout campus. Students confirmed that the boy had turned down several challenges to duel. Critics called the refusals a clear sign of weakness. Yang Chen explained that he was only willing to fight worthy opponents, and they ran away, asking if they were tough enough to compete with him. Suddenly, Yang Chen noticed something, and he turned towards the noise. Li Heng suddenly appeared in the arena. The representative of the Golden Eagle clan issued a new challenge. Jan didn't even understand who it was. The stranger introduced himself as Li Heng of the Golden Eagle clan, issuing a challenge. There was a surprised clarification about belonging to the Golden Eagle clan. Yang Chen calmly accepted Li Heng's challenge without hesitation. The news of Yang Chen's agreement to fight instantly spread among the disciples. The crowd rushed to the training arena where the fight was to begin. The spectators loudly cheered for Li Hyun to crush his opponent. The other part of the audience supported Yang Chen, believing in his strength. Before the fight, the opponents began to independently discuss the betting rules. Li Hyun suggested fighting without rules, testing the opponent's courage. The crowd was shocked by the proposal to fight without restrictions. Yang Chen rejected mortal combat, fearing the consequences of killing within the academy's walls. The guy hinted at the fear of the clan's revenge by offering reasonable terms of the bet. Li Hyun said that it was not interesting at all. Yang Chen demanded to name the specific collateral that the opponent could offer. The proposal to place 100 low-grade spiritual stones was made with mockery. Yang Chen ridiculed the paltry bet, calling it a disgrace to the clan's reputation. Yang Chen offered a rare, mid-grade yellow ring as a bet, citing his humble origins. The yellow ring proposal came as a shock. The presence of such an artifact in a newcomer was considered incredible. Spectators confirmed the rarity of the ring. Yang openly asked Li Heng if there was a similar bet. He stood silently and was angry. After this, Yang demanded 1,000 low-grade spirit stones, threatening to quickly deal with his opponent. Li Hyun didn't understand why this boy was so rich. Li Heng flew up to Luo Yun and asked how many of these stones he had. Li Heng's assistant only provided 205 stones, foiling the plan for a big bet. And so the guy had to ask the girl next to him for money as well. And having taken everything from them, he returned to the arena. Having already placed his bet, Li Heng swore on his family name that Yang Chen would not leave the arena on his own 2 feet today. Yang Chen sarcastically remarked that a person who borrowed stones had no right to make loud statements. The guy reminded about the agreed rule. A fight to the death is allowed without restrictions. The official confirmation of the rules was brief, giving the start. Li Heng accused Yang Chen of cowardice, but he approved the deadly conditions of the battle. The countdown began after the final confirmation of the rules by both sides, and as soon as the fight began, the girl ran away from the arena. And Li Hyun immediately activated his golden and strong fighting spirit. The audience discussed the imbalance of power. Li Heng's level 6 versus Yang Chen's level 3. The difference in strength caused pessimism. Yang Chen's motives were considered suicidal. The appearance of the golden feather bag in the arena foreshadowed the use of a special technique. The blow was aimed directly at the main character. Ian said it looked great and activated his fighting spirit on his fingers, and he shot his energy at him like a pistol. Li Hyun tried to repel this energy, and he almost succeeded. This surprised him very much, and breaking through his fighting spirit, he saw the defenseless Yang Chen in front of him, and immediately pressed him with his energy. This caused a stir in Li Hyun, who began to shout deadly curses at Yang. It was also visible from the outside, how the strong Li Hyun was beating a defenseless guy. The audience was in shock. The energy was burning through them, and Yan just smiled. Suddenly, a huge seal and fighting spirit formed around him. Li Hyun's strike missed its target, leaving everyone confused. But Li Heng's hand was right on Yang Chen's waist. What was going on? Suddenly, the fighting spirit of the protagonist began to wrap around the bastard's hand. All of Li Hyun's anger suddenly evaporated, replaced by a humiliating sense of helplessness. Yang Chen started laughing, because now he could see that the person in front of him was just a piece of shit. Li Hyun's attempt to strike failed, showing his complete incompetence. The guy stood there and didn't know what to do in this situation. Li Heng's attempt to escape was thwarted, and the moment for retreat was lost, and immediately launched a projectile at his head. And the guy flew away a couple dozen meters, falling to the ground with a broken face. He immediately grabbed it and began to scream in pain. Jan stepped on it with his foot, and then he reminded them of the right to cancel the bet according to the terms of their bet. Li Hyun nodded quickly. He didn't want to die. Yang Chen declared his peacefulness, ordering Li Heng to avoid him. Li Heng humbly promised to avoid meeting him, addressing the boy as Brother Chen. The witnesses were perplexed. The blow to the Dantian did not cause any harm to Yang Chen. From the stage, Yang turned to Xiao and said that it was good luck. They would have a delicious meal today. Yang Chen's presence changed the status of the North Campus, raising its prestige. The scene changed again to the Garden of Swords. Yan returned with Xiao very cheerful. But suddenly something caught their attention. It was the ant who was massaging the master's shoulders. The man cried out in pain when little Luolo suddenly pinched him, and she began to massage even more diligently. Chambogong demanded caution after noticing the masseuse's abrupt movements. The mentor sharply reprimanded the student for leaving Ufa prematurely, but the guys were just embarrassed. Xian Bogong ordered tea to be served, calling the disciple a slow-witted stone. Auntie immediately asked Chen's opinion about the conditions for practice in Ufa. Yan admired Ufa as a cultivation shrine, especially its battle arena. Aunt Jing called Yang Chen to become a core disciple before the end of the year for a special opportunity. The guy asked about the essence of this opportunity, interested in the details. The master immediately revealed the name, Tianan's Secret World. Yang Chen clarified the features of this place, having never encountered secret worlds. Aunt Jing began to explain the nature of the secret worlds as unstable spatial rifts. She clarified that most of these worlds eventually collapse without control. The key rule was announced. Secret worlds have strict energy level restrictions. The restrictions included prohibition for strong heavenly ranks and preventing accelerated decay. The Tianan world ruled by Wufu was only opened once a year to core disciples. Aunt Jing emphasized the need for Yang Chen to obtain the status of core disciple before the opening. John immediately said that he understood everything clearly. The scene changed again to a sunny day in the garden, from which Yang and Xiao quickly flew out. The boy jokingly accused the master of being afraid to disturb his twilight love. The master ordered the students to return to the academy and irritably threw the pet right into Jan's face. Finally, they all got up from the floor, and Jan took the dog in his arms. They only saw the master move further into the garden. Yang Chen thoughtfully asked Xiao about the need for training after hearing this, but then he suggested taking the pet with him, finding this idea reasonable. After all, beautiful girls were very interested in this little animal. They touched and stroked him in every possible way. But Yang Chen was still a little jealous. Near the closed area of the North Campus, Lin Pai encountered a stranger and her beloved brother. The guy didn't understand anything. After all, the girl didn't recognize him at all. Xiao introduced Yang Chen as her savior in front of Lin Pai. Lin Pai found out the guy's name, confirming his identity. Lin Pai called Yang Chen annoying, accusing him of attracting unnecessary attention. The boy assumed that Elder Q was spreading gossip about him. He looked at them and didn't understand. Maybe the girl was looking for someone? The boy exclaimed that Zhao had captured Lin Pai, surprised by this. The girl asked in bewilderment about the strange term captivity. Lin Pai started an argument about Yang Chen's demand to call her master. The guy calculated the difference in status, suggesting that Lin Pai call him brother. Suddenly, Lin Pai was distracted by the puppy, excitedly calling the animal to her. The pet was angry at the neglectful puppy. He is actually a lord. The pet swore to take revenge on Yang Chen with 1,000 blows to the head for the humiliation. Lin Pai was delighted to hear about Yang Chen's victory over Li Heng. And all this is 100% from Uncle Yan. Uncle gave Lin Pai the order to train hard for 3 months, without pride. Then she would go with him. Yang Chen took this as recognition of his talent, and promised to immerse himself in intensive training. 3 months later, progress was made in the restricted area of North Campus. The guy trained and hit with his new strength, and the blow passed through the air like a blade, leaving behind huge holes in the stone. 25 ki but only 30 sword chi of Lingshan meant achieving mastery in the sword. The pet demanded the spiritual stones again, showing an insatiable appetite. Jan praised him for this, and he handed him 1 stone. Then the pet snatched it from his hands and began to quickly gnaw it with pleasure. Yang Chen calculated that 15 stones a day would ruin him without solving the problem. Suddenly he heard someone calling for Hao Hei's pet. It was Xiao with a girl who really liked this dog. Suddenly, the guy had an idea on how to deal with the gluttonous pet. Jian announced a double return home, clearly pleased with the situation. Zhao was happy to see his brother, unlike his companion. Suddenly a small animal ran up to them. The girl picked him up and assumed that the stern mentor was tormenting him again. Yang Chen offered to take Xiao Hei. The girl asked for permission again, receiving a confident affirmative answer. Jan immediately agreed. Lin Pai solemnly introduced Xiao Hei as her new companion, and she kissed the dog. Yang Chen boasted about reaching the 4th level of the true martial world, teasing Wuke, but Xiao couldn't say anything. The girl immediately quipped that the 6th level made the guy's bragging funny. Yang Chen was shocked. Suddenly the girl remembered an urgent matter, the exam, ordering Yang Chen to follow her without delay. The guy asked again, "Where are they going?" Xiao delighted the boy with the news that he would soon be tested as a core student of the North Campus. And Jan was really happy. At the door of the zone, Lin Pai told Yang Chen to go alone, announcing her departure. But Jan hesitated a little. On the way, he noticed an improvement in Xiao Hei's condition thanks to the daily spirit stones, and he quickly ran away, leaving the girl with the pet. She was very surprised by the pet's ability to absorb spiritual energy. The girl immediately put her hand in her pocket and began actively searching for the stone there. And as soon as she took it out, the pet became active. His eyes began to glow, and the girl fed him the stone with a smile, which he gnawed very quickly and with pleasure. This surprised them very much. The girl personally saw how the pet gnawed through a low-grade spiritual stone. Lin Pai asked Wuke about the origin of the unusual creature. Xiu said the guy just picked it up. Lin Pai persistently asked about the location of the unusual pet. Xiao admitted to not knowing the creature's origin. Lin Pai decided to later ask her brother for the exact location to look for something similar. Meanwhile, Yang Chen clearly introduced himself as having arrived at the closed area for the exam. In front of him were 2 masters and a pair of warriors. The examiner asked the boy's name again to confirm his identity. Yang's level 4 strength was considered low, but he was invited due to rumors of defeating Li Heng. The coach called Meng Ta and the others to interrupt the training process. They came right away. The examiner instructed Meng Ta to test the candidate, telling him not to underestimate the opponent. And the huge Meng Ta marked his 6th level before sparring with Yang Chen. The 6th level of the true martial world? This is clearly not enough to test. The examiner decided that Yang Chen was refusing the test, and the opponent urged not to miss the chance. The guy clarified that 1 opponent is not enough, demanding 5 opponents at once. Meng Ta took this as a personal insult and a disregard for his strength. Yang Chen insisted that one fighter really couldn't compete with him. The opponent shook his head, calling the demand unprecedented impudence. Qian Bogong explained in the MC's memoirs that on the main campus, arrogance is a strategy for obtaining resources. Yang Chen challenged skeptics to test his claim in combat themselves, and Meng Ta immediately activated his fighting spirit. The appearance of the Earth Heavenly Tao Master caused shock among the observers. Meng Ta immediately sent his hammer forward towards the protagonist, but Yan was no slouch and immediately activated his fighting spirit. And he also directed it forward towards the hammer, breaking the hammer with one blow, thus greatly surprising his opponent. His legs gave way. After all, enough energy reached the guy to injure him. The boy asked Yan about the nature of the sword technique he saw for the first time. The examiner immediately recognized the power of Lingshan, a rare inheritance of swordsmen. The technique clearly surpassed the initial level, confirming the mastery of the sword. North Campus has acknowledged the emergence of a new monster, despite its lowly 4th level. John saw the father of the girl he saved. Uncle Shu warned, talent does not justify laziness. It is not unique to Ufa. The old man suddenly noticed a strange resemblance between Yang Chen and himself in his youth. The man declared his complete submission to Yang Chen in the restricted area of the North Campus. Yan didn't like it very much. Master set a condition, the 9th level of the true martial world by the end of the year or exile. An additional requirement is to master the sword power of Lingshan to the master level in order to be admitted to the secret world. Word of the harsh conditions spread quickly among the students. Many considered the task impossible. From level 4 to level 9 in a month is impossible. It has been confirmed that Dean Q personally put forward these demands. The students gasped when they learned of Yang Chen's current level. Level 4 seemed like too weak a start. The news reached every corner of campus within hours. The scene switched to the courtyard, where Xiao entered and addressed his master. He asked, "What does the blonde want?" Xiao began to speak, apparently wanting to say something for his brother. The master directly asked the blonde about the reality of fulfilling the conditions. Xiu said that of course he could. Then the man asked this question, "Does that mean his brother can do it too?" Xiao confidently stated that if anyone was capable, it was Yang Chen. The master asked him if he could master the Panlong style to a master level, and the boy answered yes. Wuke retorted, "Lingshan is more difficult than Panlong," but the boy nodded in determination. Xiao briefly thanked his mentor and immediately went to train. The man chuckled and said that Xiao was just an idiot. The scene immediately switched to Jan. He was very unhappy. After all, his new house was clearly not very good. The boy appreciated the modest dwelling in the closed area, a special gift from the dean. The scene has changed. Tianjin Tower on the North Campus has raised questions, especially in Yang Chen, about its ability to accelerate the growth of strength. Lin Pai frankly admitted that it was the worst among the training weapons on all campuses. The guy exhaled with bitterness and fatigue. However, for physical perfection, the tower remained an indispensable sanctuary. Yang Chen thanked the girl and immediately headed out to explore the tower. A few moments later, he was already at the gate. They surprised him with their size. At the entrance hung a board with critical indicators of the students' endurance. The ranking revealed details. Gu Chen lasted 79 hours on the 6th floor. Yuba achieved 63 hours, and Liu Yuan achieved 61 hours at the same level. 1,001 hours was the record for the 6th floor in the tower's history. Qiu Zhenji only ranked 97th with 31 hours on the 6th floor. The guy was amazed at the low rank of the famous master in this rating. The question arose, why did no one climb higher than the 6th floor of the 9-tiered tower? Yang Chen walked inside, hoping that the gravity of the first level would be bearable. But she immediately made herself known. Yan bent over completely, because it was almost beyond his strength. He activated the firefighting spirit, and he barely got up, exhaling heavily. Then he saw a site where warriors were fighting, and on the other side there are some stone rooms. The gravity of the first floor was shocking. The attempt to absorb the spirit stones failed. After half an hour, the body adapted to the monstrous pressure. The guy realized that simultaneously protecting the body and cultivating chi here is impossible for ordinary people. But his unique energies of thunder and sun allowed him to break this rule. He urgently went to look for a stone room to test his theory, and then he saw some warrior coming out of one of the rooms. John immediately ran towards the room to be the first in it. The stranger rudely demanded that the stone room be vacated, declaring his rights to it. But as soon as he started running, Jan closed the door. In the end, the guy didn't succeed. The door was closed right in front of his face. The unsuccessful one asked, "Who is this guy?" The students recognized Yang Chen as a newcomer who had recently been accepted into the closed area of campus. The aggressor mentioned that his family had been waiting a long time for this room to be vacated. He accused the guy of stealing the place through a freak accident. Observers explained that the newcomer did not know the rules of priority in Qianjun Tower. The bets on the conflict were accepted. Shifan clearly had superior strength to the inexperienced Yang Chen, who sat in the room in horror. Inside the stone room, gravity was significantly higher than outside. He immediately took out the stone and activated it, and then quickly absorbed it to restore energy. The guy was delighted at the multiple acceleration of spiritual energy absorption, and soon there was nothing left of the crystal at all. Suddenly he felt a change in his inner principles. It felt like a sword had pierced the inner dragon, and this sent a strong pain throughout the main character's entire body. The boy screamed in unbearable pain, and then he bit his tongue in order not to give up his position. Pain pierced his entire body, his face twisted, and cries of pain came from his lips. His brain was almost turning to mush. Finally, the guy managed to maintain concentration while simultaneously analyzing his sea of consciousness, and then he plunged into a strange space similar to outer space. There was a suggestion that there had been a breakthrough to the second level of the ancient dragon art. He tried to touch the dragon energy, and he grabbed some book from it with joy on his face. It was the book Dragon Art Martial Body. He understood that to form it, it was necessary to open 36 combat points in the body. These points were located at key joints. Opening them gave the power to tear apart dragons. The idea of killing a dragon with bare hands seemed ridiculous, but the technique intrigued the young man. He returned to the real world and thought about what to do next. The first target was the combat point on the left wrist joint. He touched it and began to open it. Lightning started to fly in different directions. Suddenly he was very surprised by something. The process of opening a point turned out to be less painful than expected, but it seemed so to him. The opening phase had arrived, and pain again pierced his entire body. He screamed unbearably, and then, unable to bear it any longer, he activated his fiery aura. Finally, some relief came to him. He looked at his hand, and there was some strange glow of energy near it. A problem arose. My left hand went numb after an unsuccessful energy condensation. Yang Chen decided to continue practicing despite the complication. The scene switched back to the latecomer. At the 6th level of the true martial world, he could endure half a day in a stone room, but not more than this period at the current level of power. The student was amazed. A 4th-level novice spent a whole day in the room. Shifan began to persistently watch the door, waiting for the guy to come out. There is speculation that Yang Chen may have died inside the building. He decided to knock on it furiously. The door failed to open after the supposed death, raising new questions. The master approached him from behind. The guy immediately spread a rumor about the guy's death in the stone room. The master stepped forward and touched the wall to feel something. And I felt Jan's energy. The teacher said that the boy was alive. The appearance of a living Yang Chen after a day shocked the guy. He had been there for too long already. The master immediately told him that Yang Chen's strength would exceed all expectations of those around him, and he left, leaving Shan bewildered. He decided that the guy was deliberately hiding his true skill level. A level 7 should be training higher, not occupying the beginner's rooms. The scene switched back to Jan, who was already pleased. Yang Chen successfully condensed the first battle point in an incredibly short time. Now he could move freely under gravity without the strain of true qi. Suddenly, his stomach started to rumble very loudly. The guy decided to interrupt his training to replenish his strength. Coming out with a smile on his face and very happy, he saw a huge crowd outside, looking at him with anger. Yan immediately asked Shi Fan about the dissatisfaction he had noticed earlier. The opponent quickly denied the claims, muttering something under his breath. Yang Chen insisted on being truthful, calling Shi Fang a coward. But since he had no complaints, Jan went. Shi Fan mentally admitted that people like Yang Chen who hid their strength were the most annoying. The scene changed to a table laden with food. Yan ate all of this and thought that after awakening his fighting spirit, his appetite had grown. He ate it all and leaned back in his chair, thinking that it was time to continue training. Then the guy came out of the gate, and those who were standing outside asked, "Why is he here again?" Another warrior was shocked by the shouts about the ownership of the stone room. After all, the guy is already on the 7th level of the combat realm. He needs to go to the 2nd floor. And Ian went to activate the huge wall. It opened and he saw a huge staircase, and Jan realized that he had a long way to go. Then he got up and realized that he had been careless. He finally reached the second floor and realized that the suppression was much stronger here. The guy looked around and didn't understand. Why was there no one here? He was very tired and thought, maybe he should go down to the first floor again. Then a door nearby also opened and a man began to come out of it. It was a red-haired, bearded teacher who asked the main character, "What is it?" John greeted him, and the teacher asked him what he was doing on the second floor. The woodcutter began to worry. After all, Jan couldn't be on this floor now. He then looked at him and asked, how could he have reached the second floor at only the 4th level of the martial realm? Jan made a guilty face and asked, shouldn't he have gone up to the second floor? The teacher waved it off and said that was not what he meant. He reminded Jan that he had said earlier that he had never practiced physical arts. Is that true? Jan became guilty again and said that it was so. He only started training yesterday. The teacher was shocked and exhaled heavily. Jan, in turn, took his leave and said that he could no longer stay there. He had to go down to the first floor. And he ran down the stairs, followed by the surprised gaze of the red-haired teacher. The main character ran to the first floor and ran through the crowd to another door. And then a bearded man came down to the first floor and asked everyone if they had seen Yan Chen. The guy with the orange armband pointed to the stone room that the nasty Yang Chen had taken back for himself. The master cleared his throat and asked the boys to tell Jan that he was doing the wrong thing and that the red-haired man was looking for him. Jan was already sitting in the room and talking about how he felt much more comfortable on the first floor. He sat and thought that to have the same comfort on the second floor, he would have to open a second outlet. He looked at his hand, and he put his finger to his forearm. More and more energy began to swirl around him. He opened a new point and suddenly began to scream in pain. The energy spilled out. Gigi didn't understand. What was happening? He was in much more pain now than when he opened the point of his left wrist. The point tried to open, but it was still terribly painful. Jan realized that at this rate he wouldn't be able to open the point on his right wrist even in 10 days. He didn't believe it. Why did the difficulty of discovery increase so much already on the second one? How would he then be able to discover all 36? It would take him centuries to do it. The guy thought, maybe it's all about true chi, then he can try another way, and activated his purple energy. Jan was happy. Now nothing hurt, and the point began to open faster. He looked at his hand and thought that he didn't expect such power from the true thunder energy, although it didn't reach the level of the sun ki in opening combat points. One day later, everything was finally ready. Ian meditated rigidly in the air. And then he swung his fist with energy, and then he struck with his energy right in the stone room. The new strength and power made him happy.